In the small town of Winter Heaven, nestled deep in the heart of a snow-draped valley, Christmas was always the most magical time of the year. Every street sparkled with lights, and every home glowed with the warmth of the holiday spirit. But this year, something was missing. 11-year-old Clara Morgan stared out of her frosted bedroom window, watching snowflakes drift lazily from the sky. Normally, she'd be outside making snow angels or helping her mom bake gingerbread cookies. But this year was different. Her dad had lost his job a few months ago, and money was tight. The usual excitement and joy in their home had been replaced with quiet conversations and worried looks. "I just wish things could be the way they used to be," Clara murmured, her breath fogging up the glass. Her younger brother Max burst into the room, his face smeared with chocolate. "Clara, come quick. There's a man at the door with the biggest beard I've ever seen." Clara frowned. "What are you talking about, Max?" "He said he needs to talk to you. Something about saving Christmas." Max tugged at her sleeve, his excitement infectious. Curious, Clara followed Max downstairs. At the door stood an elderly man wrapped in a thick red coat, his beard so long it nearly touched the snowy ground. His eyes sparkled like twinkling stars, and when he smiled, it felt as though the entire room lit up. "Clara Morgan," the man said in a voice as deep as a winter night. "I've been looking for you." The man introduced himself as Nicholas, but Clara didn't need much convincing to realize who he really was. "Santa," she whispered, her eyes wide. Nicholas chuckled. "You're a clever one. But I'm here on a very important mission, Clara. You see, the Christmas star, the magical light that keeps the spirit of Christmas alive, has gone out. Without it, there'll be no Christmas this year. No joy, no hope, and no magic." Clara's heart sank. "That's terrible. But why are you telling me this?" "I'm just a kid." Nicholas knelt, his warm hands resting on her shoulders. "Because you're not just any child, Clara. You made a wish so pure and full of hope that it reached the North Pole. That's how I found you. You might be the only one who can reignite the Christmas star." Clara glanced at Max, who was now bouncing on his toes. "What do I have to do?" Nicholas pulled out a golden compass, its needles spinning wildly. "This will guide you. To reignite the Christmas star, you'll need to find 3 magical artifacts hidden across Winter Heaven. Each one represents an important part of Christmas: joy, kindness, and love. Only when all 3 are brought together will the star shine again." Clara hesitated. "But why me?" Nicholas smiled. "Because sometimes the smallest light can shine the brightest." With her heart racing, Clara bundled up in her warmest coat and boots. Max insisted on coming along, his toy sword strapped to his side. "I'm your protector," he declared proudly, "in case we run into snow monsters." Nicholas handed Clara the compass, which began glowing softly in her hands. "Follow its light. And remember, the journey won't be easy, but I have faith in you." As they stepped out into the snowy night, the world seemed quieter than usual. The town's festive lights flickered faintly, and the air felt heavy, as if the magic of Christmas was slipping away. Clara tightened her grip on the compass, which pointed toward the town square. The first artifact was close. The square was deserted, its usual holiday cheer replaced by an eerie stillness. The towering Christmas tree in the center was dark, its ornaments dull and lifeless. Clara's breath caught when the compass pulsed brightly. "It's here," she said, stepping closer to the tree. But as she reached for the lowest branch, the snow around them began to swirl. The wind howled, and from the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in icy mist. It was tall and menacing, its eyes gleaming like frozen shards. "Who dares disturb the tree?" the figure demanded, its voice sharp as icicles. Clara's knees trembled, but she squared her shoulders. "We're here to save Christmas. We need the artifact of joy." The figure laughed, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. Joy. There is no joy here. Only despair. But if you wish to prove me wrong, you must pass the test. Max stepped forward, brandishing his toy sword. You leave my sister alone! The figure ignored him, focusing on Clara. Joy is not something you can take. It is something you must create. Show me the joy you carry within, or you will leave empty-handed. Clara's mind raced. How could she prove joy when the town felt so gloomy? She thought of the moments that had always made her happiest, decorating cookies with her family, playing in the snow with Max, and hearing her dad's silly jokes. Slowly an idea began to form. Max, Clara whispered, remember the snowball fight we had last year? Max grinned. The one I won. You didn't win. Clara laughed. But let's have another one, right now. Without waiting, she scooped up a handful of snow and lobbed it at Max. It hit him square in the chest, and he burst out laughing. Soon, they were diving into the snow, giggling and tossing snowballs with abandon. The figure watched silently as the siblings' laughter filled the air. Slowly, the Christmas tree began to glow, its ornaments regaining their sparkle. From its branches, a golden bell appeared shining brightly. Clara reached for it, her heart swelling with warmth. Is this the artifact of joy? The figure nodded, its icy demeanor softening. You have proven that joy is found in the simplest of moments. Take the bell and continue your journey. Clara and Max returned to the street where Nicholas waited by the sleigh. His face lit up when he saw the golden bell. You've done well, he said, his voice filled with pride. But there are still 2 more to find. The compass will guide you to the next. As the siblings climbed back into the sleigh, Clara felt a spark of hope. They had brought joy back to the Christmas tree, and with it, a piece of the magic. But she knew the hardest challenges were yet to come. The compass spun again, pointing toward the hills beyond the town. The second artifact awaited. As Nicholas guided his sleigh through the snowy hills beyond Winter Haven, Clara clutched the golden bell tightly. It glowed softly, a reminder of the joy they had rekindled. Beside her, Max leaned out of the sleigh, trying to catch snowflakes on his tongue. Where are we going now? Clara asked, glancing at the glowing compass in her hand. Its needle pointed north, toward a dense forest blanketed in snow. The trees loomed tall and mysterious, their branches heavy with frost. To find the second artifact, Nicholas said, his voice steady. This one represents kindness. Without it, the magic of Christmas cannot survive. Clara nodded, though she felt a twinge of nervousness. The first test had been challenging, and she couldn't imagine what this one would demand of her. But she wasn't about to back down. Christmas needed her. The sleigh landed at the edge of the forest, where a narrow path wound its way between the trees. The compass pulsed in Clara's hand, urging her forward. You'll have to go on foot from here, Nicholas said. The artifact lies deep within the forest, but be cautious. This path is known to test one's heart. Max hopped out of the sleigh, his toy sword still strapped to his side. Don't worry, Santa. I'll protect Clara. Nicholas chuckled, but his gaze was serious as he handed Clara a lantern. The light will guide you when things seem darkest. Trust in your heart, Clara. With the bell safely tucked into her pocket, Clara took Max's hand, and together they ventured into the forest. The air was colder here, and the only sound was the crunch of their boots on the snow. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. As they walked, Clara noticed small, shimmering footprints in the snow. They sparkled faintly as if made of stardust. Do you see those, Max? Yeah, Max said, squinting. Maybe it's an elf, or a snow fairy. The footprints led them to a clearing where a small, scruffy reindeer stood shivering beside a frozen pond. Its antlers were uneven, and its fur was matted with ice. When it saw them, it backed away, its big brown eyes filled with fear. "Poor thing," Clara whispered, kneeling to get a better look. "It's all alone." The reindeer let out a soft whimper, its legs trembling. Clara's heart ached. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a gingerbread cookie she'd saved from earlier. "Here," she said gently, holding the cookie out. "You must be hungry." The reindeer hesitated, its nose twitching. Slowly, it inched closer and nibbled at the cookie. Clara smiled as it relaxed, its trust growing with each bite. "We can't just leave it here," Clara said. "It's freezing." "Let's take it with us," Max said, already tying his scarf around the reindeer's neck. "We can call it Blitzen Jr." Clara laughed. "I don't think that's its name, but okay." The reindeer nudged Clara's arm, as if thanking her. The compass in her hand began to glow brighter, the needle pointing deeper into the forest. As they continued their journey, the trees grew denser and the path became harder to follow. The air felt heavy, and shadows seemed to move at the edges of their vision. "I don't like this," Max whispered, clutching Clara's hand tightly. "It feels scary." Clara held up the lantern Nicholas had given her. Its warm glow pushed back the shadows, giving them courage. "We'll be okay. Just stay close." Suddenly, they heard a rustling noise behind them. Clara whirled around, the lantern swinging in her hand. From the darkness emerged a hunched figure cloaked in tattered robes. Its face was hidden, but its voice was sharp and cold. "Why do you wander in my forest?" the figure demanded. "What do you seek?" Clara swallowed her fear. "We're looking for the artifact of kindness. Christmas depends on it." The figure laughed, a harsh, echoing sound. "Kindness. You humans speak of it often, but rarely do you show it. If you wish to prove your worth, you must face a challenge." "What kind of challenge?" Clara asked, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. The figure pointed a gnarled finger toward a large, frozen tree at the edge of the clearing. Its branches were bare, and its trunk was cracked and lifeless. This tree once thrived, nourished by the kindness of those who passed by. But now, it stands frozen, forgotten. If you can bring it back to life, the artifact will reveal itself. Clara and Max approached the tree, unsure of what to do. The reindeer stayed close, its warm breath visible in the icy air. "How do we bring a tree back to life?" Max asked, poking at the frozen bark with his sword. Clara thought about what Nicholas had said earlier. Kindness isn't about grand gestures. It's about the little things that warm the heart. She knelt by the tree and placed her hands on its trunk. "Maybe it needs to feel loved," she said. "Like how we helped the reindeer." Max nodded and began gathering snow to build a small pile at the base of the tree. "This will keep it warm," he said. Clara smiled and pulled a tiny red ornament from her pocket. It had been a gift from her dad last Christmas, and she always carried it with her. Carefully, she hung it on one of the tree's brittle branches. "This is for you," she said softly. "Because every tree deserves to be beautiful, Gawk." The reindeer stepped forward and gently pressed its nose against the tree. To their amazement, a soft golden light began to spread through the bark, climbing up the branches. The ice melted away, and tiny green leaves sprouted, followed by delicate red berries. The tree shimmered with life, and from its highest branch, a silver heart-shaped pendant appeared, glowing brightly. The cloaked figure stepped forward, its form less menacing now. "You have shown true kindness, not only to the tree but to all you've encountered. Take the pendant, and may it guide you on your journey." Clara reached up and took the pendant, feeling its warmth in her hand. The reindeer nuzzled her side, and she smiled. "Thank you," she said to the figure. "We won't let Christmas down." As they made their way back to Nicola's, the forest seemed brighter, the shadows retreating. Nicholas greeted them with a broad smile. "You've done it again," he said, his eyes twinkling. "The second artifact is yours." Clara held up the pendant and the bell. "What's next?" Nicholas pointed to the horizon, where the first rays of dawn were breaking. "The final artifact awaits. It will test your courage and your heart. Are you ready?" Clara looked at Max and the reindeer, both by her side. She nodded. "We're ready." With the golden bell of joy and the silver pendant of kindness safely tucked into her satchel, Clara climbed back into the sleigh beside Max and their new companion, the scruffy reindeer they had named Frost. Nicholas snapped the reins, and the sleigh soared into the sky, the crisp winter wind biting at their faces. "Where to now?" Clara asked, her fingers wrapped tightly around the glowing compass. "To the highest peak in the north," Nicholas replied. "The final artifact, the Star of Courage, rests there. But this test will be the most challenging of all. It will require bravery, not just for yourself, but for others." Clara exchanged a glance with Max. "We've come this far. We can do it." But Max grinned, though Clara could see his hand gripping Frost's fur for comfort. The sleigh landed at the base of a towering mountain, its peak disappearing into swirling clouds. The compass pulsed urgently, pointing toward the summit. "This is as far as I can take you," Nicholas said, his face solemn. "The rest of the journey is yours alone." Clara nodded, swallowing the lump of fear rising in her throat. With Max at her side and Frost leading the way, she began the climb. The path was steep and treacherous, the snow thick and unyielding. Bitter winds howled around them, carrying whispers that sent shivers down Clara's spine. "What's that sound?" Max asked, his voice barely audible over the wind. Clara paused, listening. The whispers grew louder, forming words that seemed to swirl in the air. "Turn back, you're not strong enough, leave while you can." "It's just the wind," Clara said firmly, though her heart pounded. "Don't listen to it." Max tightened his grip on her hand, and they pressed on. Halfway up the mountain, they came to a narrow bridge of ice spanning a deep chasm. Frost stopped, pawing nervously at the ground. "We have to cross," Clara said, peering down into the abyss. The compass glowed brighter, urging them forward. Max hesitated. "What if it breaks? What if we fall?" Clara took a deep breath and knelt beside him. "Remember what Nicholas said. Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you are scared." Max looked at her, his eyes wide but determined. "Okay. Let's do it." Clara stepped onto the bridge first, testing each step. The ice groaned under her weight, but it held. She reached back for Max, and together they moved slowly, Frost following close behind. As they reached the middle of the bridge, a shadowy figure materialized before them. It had no face, only glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through them. "Why do you seek the Star of Courage?" the figure demanded, its voice like the echo of a storm. "To save Christmas," Clara said, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. The figure loomed closer. "Courage is not simply bravery. It is sacrifice. Are you willing to give up what you hold most dear to achieve your goal?" Clara hesitated. "What do you mean?" The figure extended a clawed hand, pointing at the bell of joy and the pendant of kindness. "The magic they hold comes at a cost. Would you give them up if it meant saving Christmas?" Clara's hand instinctively went to her satchel. The artifacts had become symbols of their journey, their proof of all they had overcome. But deep down, she knew the answer. "If that's what it takes," Clara said firmly, stepping forward. The figure paused, then slowly nodded. "You have chosen wisely. True courage lies in selflessness." It dissolved into mist, leaving the path clear. At last, they reached the summit. The swirling clouds parted to reveal a pedestal of ice, and atop it rested a brilliant golden star, its light so bright it illuminated the entire peak. Clara approached the pedestal, her breath catching at the sight. As she reached for the star, the ground beneath them began to shake. The winds roared, and the shadows returned, circling around them like predators. "We're not done yet," Max shouted, drawing his toy sword. Frost lowered its head, ready to charge. Clara held the star tightly, its warmth spreading through her hands. She turned to face the shadows. "Leave us alone. We've come too far to give up now." The shadows closed in, their voices hissing. "You are not strong enough, you cannot defeat us." But Clara didn't back down. She raised the star high, its light piercing through the darkness. "We don't need to defeat you. We just need to believe." The star's light grew brighter, driving the shadows back. One by one, they dissolved into the wind, leaving the summit quiet and still. When the storm cleared, Nicholas appeared in his sleigh, his eyes twinkling with pride. "You've done it, Clara. You've proven that joy, kindness, and courage can overcome anything." Clara handed him the star, her heart swelling with pride. "Will this save Christmas?" Nicholas smiled. Christmas was never truly lost. It lives in the hearts of those who believe in its magic. But you've ensured its light will shine brighter than ever. As they climbed into the sleigh, the sky lit up with the colors of dawn. Nicholas guided them back to Winter Haven, where the town square was now bustling with life. The decorations sparkled, and the air was filled with the sound of carols and laughter. Clara and Max were greeted as heroes, but Clara waved off the attention. "We couldn't have done it without each other," she said, pulling Max and Frost close. That night, as Clara lay in bed, the golden bell, silver pendant, and glowing star safely on her windowsill, she smiled to herself. Christmas was saved, but more importantly, she had discovered the power of joy, kindness, and courage. And she knew she would carry that magic with her always. In the bustling workshop of Santa's village, rows of elves worked tirelessly on Christmas Eve, crafting toys, decorating ornaments, and preparing the sleigh for the big night. Among the many machines and tools, a small, dusty train named Tinker sat forgotten on a shelf. Tinker wasn't like the sleek new trains rolling off the assembly line. His paint was chipped, and his wheels squeaked whenever he moved. "Another year, and I'm still here," Tinker sighed, watching the shiny new toys being packed into Santa's sack. "Cheer up, Tinker," chirped Penny, a cheerful elf who often visited him. "Santa sees the value in everyone, even little trains like you." Tinker wanted to believe her, but it was hard when no one needed an old train anymore. As the elves celebrated their hard work with mugs of hot cocoa, Santa entered the workshop, his face grave. "Everyone listen up," he called. The room fell silent. "There's been a terrible storm over the mountains, and one of our key railways is broken. The tracks leading to the children in Pinewood Valley are completely unusable. The slave can't navigate those winds either." Santa explained, his voice heavy. "Unless we find another way, those children won't get their gifts in time." The elves gasped, murmuring anxiously among themselves. "Can't we fix the tracks?" one elf suggested. Santa shook his head. "Not in time. We need a train that can handle rough terrain and tight spaces." Penny's hand shot up. "Tinker can do it," she exclaimed. All heads turned to the dusty shelf where Tinker sat, his wheels wobbling nervously. "Tinker?" an elf asked, skeptical. "He hasn't been used in years." Penny puffed out her chest. "Tinker's sturdy and reliable. He might not be shiny, but he's perfect for the job." Santa stroked his beard, his eyes twinkling as he inspected the little train. "What do you say, Tinker? Are you up for the challenge?" Tinker gulped, his wheels trembling. I'll do my best." The elves sprang into action, polishing Tinker's frame and fixing his squeaky wheels. They loaded him with brightly wrapped presents and sturdy lanterns to light his way through the storm. "You've got this," Penny said, tightening a golden ribbon on his roof for good luck. As Tinker rolled toward the exit, Santa handed him a magical compass. "This will guide you through the storm and keep you on the right path," he said. "But remember, the real power lies within you. Your determination and your heart." Tinker felt a flicker of hope as the compass glowed warmly in his cab. The moment Tinker left the safety of the workshop, the storm hit with full force. Snow swirled in every direction, and the wind howled like a pack of wolves. His lanterns barely illuminated the tracks ahead, but the compass pulsed, guiding him forward. "This isn't so bad," Tinker said, trying to stay optimistic. But as the storm grew fiercer, the tracks became icy, and his wheels began to slip. Tinker gritted his teeth, pushing forward with all his might. Suddenly, he heard a faint cry over the wind. "Help! Someone help!" Tinker slowed down, peering into the darkness. On the side of the track was a small bunny, shivering and trapped under a fallen branch. "Don't worry, little one. I've got you," Tinker said. Using his mechanical claw, he lifted the branch and helped the bunny into his cab. "Thank you," the bunny said, snuggling into the warmth of Tinker's cab. "You're a real hero." Tinker felt a spark of pride. Maybe he wasn't so useless after all. As the journey continued, Tinker faced one challenge after another. He crossed rickety bridges, dodged falling icicles, and even outsmarted a group of mischievous snow sprites trying to derail him. With each obstacle, Tinker grew more confident. "I can do this," he thought, his wheels spinning with determination. By dawn, he reached the base of Pinewood Mountain, the final hurdle before reaching the valley. The tracks ahead were buried in snow, and the climb looked impossible. "You've come this far," the bunny said. "I believe in you." Tinker looked up at the mountain, the compass glowing brighter than ever. He took a deep breath and charged forward, his engine roaring with effort. Halfway up the mountain, the sun began to rise, casting a golden glow over the snowy landscape. The storm started to subside, and for the first time, Tinker could see the valley below. "We're almost there," he shouted, his voice echoing through the peaks. With one final push, Tinker crested the mountain and began the descent into Pinewood Valley. The tracks were still bumpy, but the thought of the children waiting for their gifts gave him the strength to carry on. As he rolled into the village square, the townspeople gathered around, cheering and clapping. Tinker's cab was emptied in no time, the children's faces lighting up as they opened their presents. "You did it, Tinker," Penny said, arriving on a smaller sleigh. Tinker beamed, his heart swelling with pride. "I couldn't have done it without everyone's belief in me." Santa appeared, his eyes twinkling. "You've saved Christmas for Pennywood Valley, Tinker. And you've proven that even the smallest train can achieve great things with a big heart." But Tinker's golden ribbon fluttered in the breeze as the villagers declared him the hero of Christmas. That night, as the stars twinkled above, Tinker rested on the tracks, feeling more useful and loved than ever before. The cheering of the villagers had long faded as Tinker prepared for the return journey. While delivering presents to Pinewood Valley had been a success, the thought of heading back through the storm left his wheels trembling. The villagers offered him warm cocoa and cookies as thanks, and the children decorated his cab with garlands and a sparkling star. "You're our hero, Tinker," a little girl said, hugging his front. Though the words filled Tinker with pride, he couldn't shake the nervous flutter in his gears. The climb up Pinewood Mountain had been difficult, but going back would mean facing the storm head-on, and he wasn't sure he could do it again. "Are you ready for the journey back?" Penny asked, her sleigh now hitched behind Tinker to carry empty gift sacks. "I'll do my best," Tinker replied, though his whistle quivered. The bunny, who had stayed snug in his cab, nudged him with encouragement. "You're stronger than you think. Tinker. You've already done the impossible once. With a deep breath, Tinker chugged forward. The villagers waved goodbye as his lanterns pierced the morning mist. The first challenge was navigating the steep descent from Pinewood Mountain. Snow had piled up overnight, covering the tracks. Tinker's wheels spun and slid, and the sleigh behind him jostled precariously. "You've got this!" Penny shouted, bracing herself against the sleigh. The magical compass glowed faintly, guiding him toward the safest path. But halfway down, a loud crack echoed through the valley. "What was that?" the bunny asked, peering out of the cab. Before Tinker could respond, an avalanche roared down the mountainside, a thundering wall of snow heading straight for them. "Faster, Tinker," Penny yelled. Tinker's engine roared as he sped along the tracks, snow spraying in every direction. The avalanche was gaining, and his wheels slipped dangerously on the icy rails. Just as it seemed the snow would engulf them, Tinker spotted a tunnel ahead. With a final burst of speed, he dove into the shelter of the tunnel, the avalanche crashing behind him in a cloud of powder. "We made it." The bunny cheered, his ears flopping in excitement. Tinker slowed to catch his breath, his cab rattling from the close call. "That was too close," he said, his voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. The tunnel led into a dense forest, where towering pines blocked most of the light. Snow clung to the branches, making the trees look like silent, frosted giants. "This place feels different," Penny said, her voice worried. The magical compass glowed brighter, urging Tinker forward, but the air grew colder, and the path became harder to see. Suddenly, strange, shimmering shapes darted among the trees. "Sprites," the bunny whispered, his ears flattening. Snow sprites were mischievous creatures known for causing trouble during storms. They giggled and chattered, their tiny, glowing figures flitting through the branches. "Look at the little train," one sprite squeaked. "Let's see if he can handle a little fun," another said, throwing a handful of snow onto the tracks. Tinker's wheels skidded as the snow turned to ice. The sprites laughed, dancing around him. "Please, stop," Tinker pleaded. The sprites ignored him, but Penny had an idea. She grabbed a sack of leftover candy canes from the sleigh and waved them in the air. "Hey, sprites! Want a treat?" she called. The sprites paused, their eyes lighting up. "Candy canes," they squealed, rushing toward her. Penny tossed the candy canes into the forest, and the sprites disappeared in a flurry of excitement. "Quick, Tinker, let's go before they come back," she urged. Tinker didn't need to be told twice. His wheels spun faster, leaving the sprites behind. As they exited the forest, a new obstacle lay ahead. A wide river covered in a thin layer of ice. The bridge that once spanned the river had collapsed under the weight of the snow, leaving no clear way across. "We can't go back," Tinker said, his voice wavering. But the ice looked so fragile. Penny examined the situation. "If we go slowly and evenly, we might be able to cross." Tinker inched onto the frozen river, his wheels creaking against the brittle surface. The sleigh behind him added extra weight, and cracks began to spiderweb beneath them. "Steady, Tinker," Penny encouraged, holding her breath. Midway across, a sharp crack echoed, and the ice began to splinter. "Faster," the bunny shouted, clinging to the cab. Tinker pushed forward, his engine straining. The ice groaned and shattered behind him, but with one final lurch, he reached the safety of the far bank. "We made it," Penny cheered, jumping out of the sleigh to inspect the wheels. "Barely," Tinker said, his cab shaking from the ordeal. The storm began to weaken as they neared Santa's village. The magical compass glowed brighter, guiding them homeward. Tinker's lanterns lit up the snowy landscape, revealing the twinkling lights of the workshop in the distance. "We're almost there," Penny said, her voice filled with relief. Tinker's wheels spun faster, his heart lifting at the sight of home. Despite the challenges, he had made it through. When Tinker rolled into the village, the elves and Santa were waiting with cheers and hugs. "You did it, Tinker," Santa said, his eyes twinkling with pride. "You braved the storm and saved Christmas for Pinewood Valley. I knew you had it in you." The bunny hopped out of the cab and hugged Tinker's front. "You're the bravest little train I've ever met." Tinker's cab glowed with warmth, and for the first time, he truly believed in his own strength. As the elves unhitched the sleigh and polished Tinker's wheels, Santa gave him a shiny new star to wear proudly on his roof. "You're not just a train, Tinker," Santa said. "You're a symbol of determination and heart." Tinker beamed, his wheels spinning happily. He had gone from a forgotten toy to a true Christmas hero. As the snowflakes began to gently fall over Santa's village, the air was filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the hum of busy elves preparing for Christmas Eve. The village was alive with joy, and Tinker, still basking in the warmth of his new star, felt an overwhelming sense of happiness. For the first time, he truly felt like he belonged. Tinker had been through so much. He'd crossed mountains, braved avalanches, and faced danger head-on. Now, as he rested beside the workshop, he realized that Christmas was more than just about delivering presents. It was about the spirit of togetherness, bravery, and helping others, no matter how small or big you were. The next morning, just as the first rays of the sun kissed the snowy ground, Santa gathered everyone around the workshop's grand tree. Elves bustled with excitement, carrying colorful packages and ribbons. Mrs. Claus smiled as she handed out freshly baked gingerbread cookies. "We have one last task for you, Tinker," Santa said, his voice booming with warmth and cheer. Tinker's wheels hummed in anticipation. "What is it, Santa?" "There's a village just beyond the forest, a place called Frostington, that needs our help," Santa explained. "Their sleigh broke down, and there's no way to get the presents to the children in time for Christmas morning." Tinker's heart raced. He'd already accomplished so much, and he was eager to help, but this seemed like an even bigger challenge. The path to Frostington was treacherous, even more so than Pinewood Valley. "Do you think you can do it?" Santa asked, his eyes twinkling. Tinker looked around at his friends, Penny, the bunny, the elves, and even the reindeer, all of them smiling with hope. "I know I can," Tinker said with a determined whistle. "I'll do my very best." The journey to Frostington was unlike any Tinker had ever faced. Snow was already falling heavily, and the wind howled as if warning them of the dangers ahead. The path through the dense forest was narrow and winding, with tall trees leaning dangerously toward the tracks. Penny sat beside Tinker in the cab, holding the magical compass that had guided him before. "The path is clear ahead, Tinker. Keep going. You've got this." Tinker puffed out steam, determined to prove that he could accomplish anything. But the deeper they went into the forest, the more the trees seemed to close in. The sleigh behind him jostled as the ground became uneven. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed in the distance. "Do you hear that?" the bunny asked, his ears standing straight up. "I hear it," Tinker replied, his whistle low and cautious. From the darkness of the forest, a large shadow appeared. It was a giant snow bear, lumbering out from behind a thick cluster of pines. Its glowing eyes fixed on the little train, and with a loud roar, it began to charge toward them. "Faster, Tinker," Penny urged, her voice shaking with fear. Tinker's wheels spun as fast as they could, but the snow bear was gaining, its paws thundering on the ground. "This isn't good," the bunny shouted. "It's too big, too fast." Tinker's mind raced. He couldn't outrun the bear, and he couldn't stop either. But then, he remembered something. He had never given up before. He had faced a mountain, a storm, and an avalanche. He could face a snow bear too. "Hold on tight," Tinker called to his passengers. With a burst of courage, Tinker took a sharp turn, diving onto a small bridge that crossed a frozen stream. The snow bear, too big to follow, skidded and slipped on the icy ground, unable to catch up. "We did it," Penny cried. The bear growled in frustration, but it couldn't do anything more. It turned away, retreating back into the forest. "That was close," Tinker said, his wheels slowing. But he didn't let up. There was still much to do, and he wasn't about to stop now. The storm continued to rage around them as they approached Frostington. The villagers there had already started to gather, watching the snow fall from their small homes. They were worried, knowing they might not get their presents in time for Christmas morning. But then, as the sky cleared and the stars began to twinkle, they saw a small, glowing light in the distance. "It's him," a child shouted, pointing excitedly toward the approaching train. Tinker, Penny, and the bunny arrived just as the last of the storm clouds parted, revealing the glowing lights of the village. The children's faces lit up with joy as Tinker slowly rolled into the town square. The village was buzzing with excitement, and the sound of jingling bells and laughter filled the air. Elves jumped out of the sleigh, helping carry presents to every house. Mrs. Claus handed out cups of hot cocoa to the cold villagers, and the magical compass glowed brightly, ensuring that each gift found its rightful place. "I can't believe it. We made it," Penny exclaimed, hopping out of the sleigh and rushing to the children. Tinker's wheels squeaked with happiness. The storm may have been fierce, but their determination and spirit had gotten them through. That night, as the town gathered around a giant bonfire, Santa stood with a proud smile on his face. "You did it, Tinker," he said. "You've saved Christmas once again, and I couldn't be prouder of you." Tinker's heart swelled with joy. He had done more than he ever thought possible, and he realized that it wasn't just about the presents. It was about spreading joy, kindness, and love. "And now, Tinker," Santa continued, "it's time for you to receive your very own special gift." Santa handed Tinker a beautifully wrapped box. When Tinker opened it, inside was a golden star, even brighter than the one on his roof. It shimmered and sparkled, representing the true spirit of Christmas. "You've earned it," Santa said, "for being the bravest, kindest, and most determined little train I know." Tinker proudly placed the star on his roof. It glowed brightly, lighting up the entire village. As the snow fell gently over Frostington, Tinker realized that Christmas was truly a time for miracles. And in his heart, he knew that no matter what challenges came his way, he would always be ready to face them, because he had the true spirit of Christmas inside him. It was Christmas Eve in the small town of Pineville, and a blanket of snow had covered the entire village. The streets, lined with twinkling lights, were bustling with people preparing for the holiday. The air was crisp and fresh, and the sound of children's laughter filled the air as they played in the snow. In the center of Pineville stood a large park, where families gathered to celebrate the season. This year, the park was especially magical. All the trees were decorated with sparkling ornaments, and a giant Christmas tree stood proudly in the center, its lights shimmering brightly against the winter sky. Among the crowd of people, a little boy named Tommy was busy building a snowman. Tommy wasn't like the other children who were running around playing games or singing carols. He was quiet, reserved, and spent most of his time by himself. His parents had recently moved to Pineville, and though they tried their best to make him feel at home, Tommy still felt out of place. He had spent the entire afternoon rolling snowballs and stacking them one on top of the other. His snowman was big and round, with a carrot for a nose and a scarf wrapped tightly around its neck. As Tommy stepped back to admire his work, he sighed. The snowman was the best he could do, but it still felt incomplete. He wanted something more. He wanted his snowman to be special, just like the Christmas tree that sparkled in the center of the park. Tommy's eyes drifted to the other snowmen scattered around the park. Some were small and simple, while others were decorated with hats and buttons, each one unique in its own way. Tommy wished he could make his snowman stand out from the rest. He wanted it to be something magical, something that would bring a smile to his face every time he saw it. As he stood there, deep in thought, he heard a voice behind him. "That's a fine snowman you've made there, young man." Tommy spun around in surprise. Standing behind him was an old man with a long white beard and a red coat. He wore a hat that seemed a little too big for him, and his boots were covered in snow. Tommy blinked. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. The old man chuckled. "I'm just someone who's been around for a long time. You can call me Mr. Claus," he said with a wink. "I've seen many snowmen in my time, but yours is quite special." Tommy didn't know what to say. He had never seen this man before, and there was something about him that felt different. But there was something about his voice that made Tommy feel warm and safe, as if the old man had known him for a long time. "Do you really think it's special?" Tommy asked shyly. Mr. Claus nodded. "I do. But I think there's a little something extra that could make it even more special." Tommy tilted his head in confusion. "What do you mean?" Mr. Claus smiled and placed a hand on Tommy's shoulder. "You see, Tommy, snowmen are made of snow. But they are also made of dreams. When you build a snowman, you're not just building something with your hands, you're creating something with your heart. And when you give your snowman a gift, it becomes more than just a pile of snow. It becomes something magical." Tommy's eyes widened. "A gift?" he asked, wondering what kind of gift he could give to a snowman. Mr. Claus gave him a knowing smile. "Why don't you give it a try?" he said. "The best gifts come from the heart." Tommy stood there, thinking for a moment. He wanted to make his snowman special, but what could he give it? He didn't have much. A scarf, a carrot, some buttons. But he wanted to give something that would make his snowman stand out from the others. Suddenly, Tommy had an idea. He ran home and returned with a small, hand-carved wooden star, a gift he had received from his grandmother before she passed away. It was his most treasured possession, and he had kept it safe all these years. With a smile, Tommy carefully placed the wooden star at the top of his snowman's head. It sparkled in the light, casting a warm glow across the snow. As he stepped back to admire his work, something incredible happened. The snowman, which had been standing lifeless just moments before, suddenly moved. It turned its head, blinking its coal eyes, and smiled down at Tommy. Tommy gasped in amazement. The snowman was alive. "Thank you for the gift," the snowman said, his voice soft and warm. "I feel more alive than I ever have before." Tommy could hardly believe it. "You can talk," he exclaimed. The snowman chuckled. "Yes, I can. And I have you to thank for it. You gave me a gift from your heart, and that's what brought me to life. You see, Tommy, gifts are powerful things. They don't just bring joy to the person who receives them, they bring joy to the giver as well." Tommy smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that he had never experienced before. The snowman wasn't just a snowman anymore. He was his friend, and he had made a true Christmas miracle come to life. And so, under the twinkling stars of the Christmas Eve sky, Tommy and his new snowman friend stood together, ready to face the magic of the season and the true meaning of Christmas. The next morning, Tommy woke up to the sound of bells jingling through the cold winter air. He rubbed his eyes and sat up in bed, wondering if the incredible events of the previous night had been a dream. But when he pulled open the curtain, he saw it through the snowman, still standing proudly in the park, with the wooden star shining brightly at the top of its head. It was no dream. Tommy quickly got dressed, his heart racing with excitement. He grabbed his mittens, his scarf, and his boots, and rushed outside. The snow crunched beneath his feet as he made his way to the park. There, standing in the middle of the snow-covered ground, was the snowman, alive and waiting for him. "Good morning, Tommy." The snowman greeted him warmly, its coal eyes sparkling with joy. Tommy could hardly believe his ears. "You're really real," he said, his voice full of wonder. The snowman chuckled. "I certainly am. And I have you to thank for that. Your gift brought me to life, Tommy. And because of that, I have something very important to share with you." Tommy's eyes widened. "What is it? What do you mean?" The snowman bent down slightly, its snowy arms gently brushing the ground. "I'm not just any snowman, Tommy. I'm a Christmas snowman. And I have a special mission. You see, every year, on Christmas Eve, the snowmen in towns and villages all around the world come to life. We are here to help spread the true spirit of Christmas. Joy, kindness, and love. And we do so by sharing a gift with someone who truly needs it." But Tommy's heart skipped a beat. "A gift? What kind of gift?" The snowman's eyes twinkled. "A gift of kindness, a gift of love, and sometimes a gift of courage. Each snowman is chosen for a reason, and each one has a special gift to give. But this year, Tommy, you are the one who has been chosen. You have shown great kindness by giving me a gift from your heart. And now, I want to show you how powerful that kind of gift can be." Tommy was both confused and amazed. He didn't know what to say, but the snowman's words felt warm and true. He looked up at the wooden star atop the snowman's head. "What do I have to do?" Tommy asked, his voice filled with determination. The snowman smiled. "All you need to do is follow your heart. You see, the true gift of Christmas isn't something you can wrap up in a box. It's something you carry inside you. Something that comes out when you least expect it. It's the kindness you show others, the love you give, and the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard." Tommy nodded, feeling a sense of purpose growing inside him. He had always tried to be kind and helpful, but now he understood that Christmas wasn't just about receiving gifts. It was about giving too. The snowman continued. "There's a family in town who needs help, Tommy. A family who has fallen on hard times, and they don't know if they'll be able to have a Christmas dinner. The mother, Mrs. Miller, is a kind woman who always helps others, but right now, she's struggling. She has 2 children, and they don't know what they'll do this Christmas. You, Tommy, are the one who can bring them the gift they need." Tommy's heart ached as he thought of the Miller family. He had seen Mrs. Miller and her children at the local bakery, where she worked. She always had a smile for everyone, even when she seemed tired. Tommy knew that she was kind, but he had never realized how much she needed help. "Is there something I can do?" Tommy asked. The snowman nodded. "Yes, Tommy. I want you to go to the Miller's house. You can bring them food, toys, or anything you think might help. But the most important gift you can give them is hope. You have a gift that will make their Christmas brighter, just as your gift made mine brighter. I know you can do this." Tommy hesitated. He didn't know how he could help. His family didn't have much, either. But as he thought about the Millers and their situation, he remembered his grandmother's words. A small act of kindness can change the world. "I'll do it," Tommy said with a newfound determination. "I'll help the Millers have a Merry Christmas." The snowman smiled, his coal eyes shining. "I knew you'd say that. But there's one more thing, Tommy. The best gifts come from the heart, but sometimes, it's the smallest things that make the biggest difference. You don't have to give everything you have. You just need to give what you can." Tommy nodded. He didn't need to buy anything grand or expensive. He could help in other ways. By sharing what he had, offering kindness, and giving a little hope to those who needed it most. The snowman gave Tommy a gentle pat on the back. "Now, go and do what your heart tells you, Tommy. You'll see that Christmas magic is real, and it starts with you." With that, Tommy set off toward the miller's house, his heart full of purpose. He didn't know exactly what he was going to do yet, but he knew one thing for sure: he was going to make this Christmas special. Not just for him, but for the millers too. As he walked through the quiet streets, the soft snow falling around him, Tommy felt a sense of warmth in his chest. The snowman's words echoed in his mind. The best gifts come from the heart. He smiled to himself. Maybe this Christmas wouldn't be like the others. Maybe it would be even better. Tommy's boots crunched in the fresh snow as he walked toward the Miller family's little house. The cold winter air nipped at his cheeks, but inside, he felt a warmth unlike any he had ever experienced before. He had a purpose now. He knew what he needed to do, and he was determined to make this Christmas special for the Millers. The Millers' house was small but cozy. It sat at the end of a quiet street, its windows dimly lit from within. A single candle flickered in the window, casting a soft, golden glow that seemed to welcome Tommy. He took a deep breath and knocked gently on the door. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing Mrs. Miller, her face lined with the weariness of long hours of work. Her eyes widened when she saw Tommy standing there, holding a small basket of bread, fruit, and a few simple toys he had gathered from his own home. "Tommy," she asked, a little surprised. "What are you doing here, my dear?" Tommy smiled up at her. "I brought something for you and your family, Mrs. Miller. It's not much, but I wanted to help make your Christmas a little brighter." Mrs. Miller blinked, and for a moment, Tommy thought he saw a tear sparkle in her eye. She stepped aside and ushered him in. "You're a sweet boy, Tommy. But you didn't have to do this. We're managing, really. It's just been a difficult year, that's all." Tommy shook his head. "I know, but I wanted to give. I've learned that the best gifts don't have to be big. They just have to come from the heart." Mrs. Miller's expression softened as she looked at him. "You're very kind, Tommy. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Tommy replied, his voice full of warmth. "Just know that someone cares." As Tommy entered the small house, he could hear the soft sounds of children playing in the other room. Mrs. Miller led him toward the kitchen, where a little table was set with mismatched plates and cups. The smell of something warm lingered in the air, but it wasn't a grand meal. Just simple food, cooked with love. Tommy placed the basket on the table. "I thought maybe you could use this for Christmas dinner. It's not much, but I wanted to share what I have." Mrs. Miller stood still for a moment, her eyes fixed on the basket. Then, with a soft sigh, she smiled at Tommy and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have no idea how much this means to us. We've been struggling, but this kindness, this is what Christmas is all about." Just then, Tommy heard the sound of footsteps approaching. A little boy and girl entered the room, their faces lighting up when they saw Tommy. "Tommy, what are you doing here?" asked the little girl, her bright eyes sparkling with curiosity. "I brought you a gift," Tommy said with a grin. He knelt down and handed each of them a small toy. "I thought you might like these." The children's faces lit up with joy. "Thank you, Tommy," they said in unison, hugging him tightly. Mrs. Miller watched the scene unfold, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You've made this Christmas so much better, Tommy. I don't know how to thank you." Tommy shrugged, his heart swelling with happiness. "You don't have to thank me. The best gift is seeing you all smile." For a moment, the room was quiet, filled only with the sounds of happy laughter as the children played with their new toys. Tommy sat down at the table, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. He had always thought Christmas was about receiving presents, but now he understood. It was about giving, sharing, and showing kindness to others. It was about making the world a little brighter, one small act at a time. As the evening wore on, Mrs. Miller prepared a simple meal with the food Tommy had brought. It wasn't a feast, but it was enough. And as they sat together around the table, laughing and talking, Tommy realized that this Christmas was more special than any he had ever known. It wasn't about fancy decorations or expensive gifts. It was about love, kindness, and the joy of being together. After dinner, Mrs. Miller stood up and walked over to the window. She gazed out at the snow falling gently outside, her face reflecting a mix of awe and gratitude. "This is the best Christmas we've had in years," she said softly. "I don't know how to thank you, Tommy. You've given us more than just gifts. You've given us hope." Tommy smiled. "That's what Christmas is all about, isn't it? Giving hope to others." Just then, a familiar voice rang out from outside. "Tommy." He turned to see the snowman standing in the yard, his large, snowy figure glowing in the soft light of the moon. The snowman waved enthusiastically. "Is everything going well?" the snowman called. Tommy stood up and walked to the door, stepping outside to speak with his friend. "It's perfect," Tommy said with a grin. "The Millers are happy. They're laughing and having a good time. This has been the best Christmas ever." The snowman smiled. "I knew you had it in you, Tommy. You've truly embraced the spirit of Christmas. You've shown kindness, given love, and brought hope to those who needed it most." Tommy's heart swelled with pride. "I couldn't have done it without you. You showed me that the true gift of Christmas is the gift of giving." The snowman nodded. "That's right, Tommy. And you'll carry this lesson with you for the rest of your life. You have a heart full of kindness, and that's the most precious gift of all, Ba." As Tommy stood there, looking out at the snow-covered streets, he felt a deep sense of joy and fulfillment. He had done something good, something meaningful. And in that moment, he knew that the true magic of Christmas wasn't in the presents or the decorations. It was in the love we share with others. And so, Tommy learned the most important lesson of all, that the greatest gift of Christmas is the gift of kindness, and that, in giving, we receive far more than we ever expected. As the snowman slowly began to fade, Tommy called out, "Thank you, snowman. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Tommy," the snowman replied, his voice carrying on the wind as it disappeared into the snowy night. And with that, Tommy returned to the warmth of the miller's home, his heart full of joy, knowing that he had given the most precious gift of all, the gift of love. The North Pole was bustling as Christmas Eve approached. Elves hurried through snowy courtyards carrying armfuls of brightly wrapped gifts, while reindeer pranced in training fields, preparing for the long journey ahead. Among the chaos, a young elf named found himself in the least exciting place in the North Pole. Sorting through dusty old books in the archives, Finn wasn't like the other elves. While they loved tinkering with toys and assembling candy canes, Finn adored stories. His favorite place was the sprawling library tucked beneath Santa's workshop, where ancient books lined every wall, their spines glittering with gold and silver lettering. This library was special. It held every Christmas story ever told, collected by Santa over centuries. But even within this magical haven, there was one place Finn was forbidden to explore: the tall, black iron door at the library's heart. No one but Santa himself had ever opened it. "Finn, what are you doing in here again?" called Holly, a cheerful elf with rosy cheeks. She stood at the entrance of the library, her hands on her hips. Finn quickly snapped shut the book he'd been reading, a tale about a snowman who danced under the moonlight. "Ah, just organizing," he said, smiling nervously. Holly rolled her eyes. "You're always in here. Don't you get tired of stories? Never, Finn declared. Stories are magic. They hold the spirit of Christmas. Well, you'd better finish up. Santa's going to announce the final preparations soon, Holly said. She paused, glancing toward the black door. And don't even think about that one. You know the rules. Finn nodded, but as Holly left, he couldn't stop staring at the iron door. What was behind it? Why was it so important? That night, as the other elves celebrated with cups of hot cocoa and jingling songs, Finn crept back into the library. The room was silent, lit only by the soft glow of enchanted snowflakes floating near the ceiling. The iron door loomed in the shadows, its surface etched with strange, swirling patterns. I'll just take a peek, Finn whispered to himself. No one will know. He approached cautiously, heart pounding. To his surprise, the door swung open at his touch, revealing a dimly lit chamber filled with glowing books. Unlike the colorful spines in the main library, these books shimmered with a silvery light, as if they were alive. Finn stepped inside, marveling at the sight. He reached out to a book hovering at eye level, its cover reading the tales that never end. As soon as he opened it, a gust of icy wind burst from the pages, and glowing words spilled into the air like shooting stars. No. Wait, Finn cried, trying to catch the floating text. But it was too late. The glowing words zipped out of the library, vanishing into the night. The next morning, the North Pole was in chaos. Snowmen were marching through the streets, reindeer were tangled in a web of golden ribbons, and elves were chasing candy canes that had come to life and were running amok. What happened? Holly demanded as she found Finn in the library. Fine gulped. Ib might have opened the forbidden door. What? Holly gasped. Do you have any idea what you've done? Those books hold Christmas magic. If the stories aren't put back, the whole holiday could fall apart. Just then, the ground trembled, and Santa himself appeared in the doorway, his red coat swirling like a storm. Finn, Santa said, his voice deep and calm, but with a hint of sternness. Come with me. Santa led Finn to his workshop, where a massive map of the world was spread across a glowing table. Tiny pinpricks of light darted across it, representing the escaped stories. You've unleashed powerful tales into the real world, Santa explained. Each one carries Christmas magic, but without the library to contain them, they'll create chaos. We must retrieve them before sunrise, or the balance of Christmas will be lost. Finn's heart sank. I didn't mean to. I know, Santa interrupted gently. But now it's up to you to fix it. Holly will help you, and there's someone else who can assist. At that moment, the workshop doors burst open, and a young girl about Finn's age stepped in. She wore a red coat and boots dusted with snow, her eyes bright with curiosity. This is Mia, Santa said. She's one of the most imaginative children I know. She'll help you track the stories, but you must work together. Mia grinned. This sounds like an adventure. Finn, still feeling nervous, nodded. Let's do it. As the three set off in Santa's sleigh, Finn couldn't help but wonder, could they really retrieve the lost stories before Christmas morning? And what other surprises did the magical tales have in store? The sleigh soared through the midnight sky, its silver runners gliding on trails of stardust. Finn clutched the edges tightly, his heart pounding as they approached their first destination, a snow-covered mountain illuminated by the aurora borealis. This is where the first story landed, Santa explained, pointing to a glowing red dot on the map. It's the legend of the winter phoenix. Be cautious, it's a tale of mystery and magic. Mia leaned over the sleigh's edge, her face lit with wonder. A phoenix. This just keeps getting better. Better isn't exactly how I'd describe it, Finn muttered, feeling a knot of worry in his stomach. As the sleigh descended, they landed in a swirling snowstorm. The wind howled, and the cold stung Finn's cheeks. He pulled his scarf tighter around his neck, squinting through the haze. At the mountain's base, a faint golden glow pulsed from within a dense forest of evergreen trees. "That must be it," Mia exclaimed, tugging Finn's sleeve. Together, they trudged through the snow, their boots crunching against the icy ground. Holly, who had joined them as their guide, carried a small satchel filled with enchanted tools Santa had given her. "Stay close," Holly warned. "This isn't just a story. It's alive now. Anything can happen." Suddenly, the glow grew brighter, and with a burst of heat, a magnificent phoenix burst from the trees. Its feathers were ablaze with fiery colors, lighting up the stormy night. The bird let out a cry that echoed through the mountains, shaking snow from the treetops. "That's incredible," Maya whispered, her breath visible in the frosty air. The phoenix circled above them, its eyes glowing like embers. Then, with a swoop of its wings, it dove toward the group, sending a wave of heat that melted the snow around them. "Quick! Use this!" Holly yelled, tossing Finn a shimmering golden quill from her satchel. "You need to rewrite the story's ending to bring it back to the library." Finn fumbled with the quill as the phoenix landed before them, its wings outstretched. It let out another cry, its gaze locked on Finn. "Why me?" Finn stammered. "Because you're the one who set it free," Holly shot back. Mia stepped forward, holding up her hands. "Wait. Maybe it doesn't want to hurt us. Look at its eyes. They're sad." Finn hesitated, looking at the phoenix more closely. Maya was right. Beneath its fiery exterior, the bird seemed lonely. "Of course," Finn said, his confidence growing. "The story says the winter phoenix guards the mountain because it's searching for something. Its long-lost companion." Holly nodded. "Then rewrite the story to give it what it's looking for." Finn knelt in the snow, the quill trembling in his hand. As he wrote in the air, golden words appeared, swirling like smoke. The winter phoenix, guided by newfound friends, finds its companion at the heart of the mountain. The phoenix let out a soft, almost hopeful cry. The golden words wrapped around it like a cocoon. And as they faded, another phoenix emerged from the forest, its feathers shimmering with icy blues and silvers. The two birds circled each other before soaring into the sky together, disappearing into the aurora. "They're gone," Maya said, her eyes wide with awe. "And so is the chaos they caused," Holly added, pointing to the forest, now calm and covered in fresh snow. The quill glowed in Finn's hand before vanishing. "One story down," he said, letting out a breath of relief. Back in the sleigh, the map shimmered as another red dot appeared, this time over a bustling city. "The next story has landed in London," Santa announced. "The Clockmaker's Christmas. It's a tale of time running out, quite literally. We must hurry." The sleigh sped toward the city, the lights of London twinkling below. They landed in the middle of a festive square, where a massive clock tower loomed over a Christmas market. "This way," Holly said, leading them toward the clock tower. Inside, the air hummed with the sound of gears turning. At the center of the room stood a giant, golden clock with hands that spun wildly. "Looks like the story is messing with time," Mia observed as she watched people outside the tower moving in strange, jerky motions. Finn pulled out another enchanted tool from Holly's satchel, a small silver hourglass. "What do I do with this?" he asked. "You'll need to synchronize the clock's hands with the hourglass to reset the story," Holly explained. As Finn climbed the tower's spiral staircase, the gears began to spin faster, and the ground shook. "Hurry!" Maya shouted from below. Finn reached the top and held the hourglass up to the clock. Golden sand began to pour from the hourglass, matching the rhythm of the spinning hands. The gears groaned, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, with a chime that echoed across the city, the clock reset itself, its hands pointing to midnight. The market outside burst back into life, and the festive sounds of carols and laughter filled the air. You did it. Mia cheered as Finn climbed back down. That's 2 stories saved, Holly said, smiling. But we're not done yet. As they returned to the sleigh, Finn noticed something change in himself. He felt braver, more confident. He'd always loved stories, but now he realized he could be part of them too. Santa placed a hand on Finn's shoulder. You're doing well, Finn, but the next story will test you even more. Finn nodded, ready for whatever came next. Let's do this. The sleigh cut through the clouds, trailing shimmering stardust behind it. Finn, Mia, and Holly huddled together, staring at the map in Santa's hands. Only one glowing red dot remained. This is the last one, Santa said, his voice steady but solemn. The most powerful story of all. The Chronicles of the Evergreen. If we fail, the magic of Christmas itself could be lost forever. Finn exchanged a nervous glance with Mia. No pressure, right? Mia grinned, nudging him. Come on, Finn. You've got this. The sleigh dipped sharply, descending toward a vast, frozen forest. Giant evergreens blanketed in snow stretched endlessly in every direction. The air sparkled with frost, and an eerie silence surrounded them as they landed. This is it, Holly said, her usual cheer replaced by a tone of seriousness. The Chronicles of the Evergreen was the very first story ever written in Santa's library. It's the source of all the other stories' magic. But now that it's loose, the balance of the library is collapsing. As they stepped into the forest, Finn felt an unsettling energy. The trees seemed to lean toward them, their branches creaking like whispers in the wind. Stick together, Santa warned, holding his lantern high. The light cast long, flickering shadows that danced across the snow. The story knows we're here. They hadn't walked far when the ground trembled beneath their feet. With a thunderous crash, an enormous tree uprooted itself, blocking their path. Its trunk twisted and cracked, forming a face with hollow, glowing eyes. Why have you come here? The tree boomed, its voice echoing through the forest. Finn stepped forward, his knees shaking but his voice steady. We've come to return the story to the library. It doesn't belong out here. The tree's eyes narrowed. The library kept us locked away for centuries. We will not go back. We're not here to trap you, Mia added, her voice gentle but firm. The library isn't a prison. It's a place where stories are shared with the world. Without it, no one will know your tale. The tree hesitated, its branches swaying as if deep in thought. Finally, it stepped aside, its voice softening. If you wish to reach the heart of the forest, you must face the keeper of the evergreen. Only then will you understand. The group pressed on, the air growing colder with each step. Finn's breath came out in icy puffs, and even Santa's lantern seemed to dim. Finally, they arrived at a massive clearing where a single tree stood. Unlike the others, this one glowed with a golden light, its branches adorned with shimmering ornaments that reflected every color of the rainbow. At its base stood the keeper of the evergreen. A tall, shadowy figure cloaked in robes of swirling mist. Its eyes glimmered like stars, and in its hands, it held an ancient, leather-bound book. You seek to return the Chronicles of the Evergreen, the keeper said, its voice both soothing and commanding. But to do so, you must prove your worth. Holly stepped forward, her hands on her hips. We've faced phoenixes, reset time, and saved countless stories tonight. What more do you need? The keeper raised a hand, and the forest around them transformed. Finn, Mia, and Holly found themselves standing in the middle of Santa's library, surrounded by empty shelves. The keeper appeared before them, holding the book open. A story is more than words on a page, the keeper said. It lives through those who experience it. Show me that you understand this truth, The pages of the chronicles of the evergreen began to glow, and images rose from them, forming shimmering figures of light. Finn recognized them immediately. The phonics, the clockmaker, and characters from the other stories they'd saved. They're all here, Mia whispered, her eyes wide. The keeper gestured toward Finn. You must weave these tales together, creating a new chapter that binds them to the library once more. Finn's mind raced. How do I? Trust yourself, Santa said, placing a reassuring hand on Finn's shoulder. You've been part of these stories. Let your heart guide you. Taking a deep breath, Finn stepped forward. The glowing figures surrounded him, their energy filling the air. He closed his eyes, letting the experiences of the night flow through him. The phonics found its companion, teaching us that no one should be alone. Finn began, his voice steady. The clockmaker showed us the importance of time and cherishing every moment. And the evergreen reminds us that Christmas is about connection. Between people, stories, and magic. As Finn spoke, the glowing figures merged, forming a radiant stream of light that flowed into the book. The library's shelves began to fill, one by one, with gleaming books that pulsed with life. When the last word was spoken, the keeper closed the chronicles of the evergreen. You have proven your worth, it said. The library is whole again. The group found themselves back in the forest, the golden tree shining brighter than ever. The keeper bowed its head. The magic of Christmas endures. Thanks to you. As they returned to the slee, Finn felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of accomplishment he'd never known before. Santa smiled at him, his eyes twinkling. You've done something extraordinary tonight, Finn. You're not just a lover of stories. You're a part of them. Mia grinned. Does this mean we can come back next year? Santa chuckled. Perhaps. But for now, let's get you two home. It's almost Christmas morning. The slee soared into the sky, carrying them back to their small town. As Finn looked out over the glowing horizon, he couldn't help but smile. He'd started the night as a quiet boy who loved books, and now he was a storyteller in his own right. And as they disappeared into the dawn, Finn knew one thing for certain: the magic of stories and Christmas would live on forever. High above the frosty plains of the North Pole, a single reindeer soared through the sky, his hooves skimming the clouds, and his breath puffing out in tiny clouds of mist. His name was Rudy, not to be confused with his famous cousin, Rudolph. Rudy wasn't part of Santa's team. He was still young, eager, and full of dreams, but he hadn't yet earned a spot on the sleigh crew. I'll show them I'm ready, Rudy muttered to himself as he practiced his flight. His antlers gleamed like polished ivory, and his fur sparkled with the faintest hint of magic, a gift all reindeer possessed, though Rudy's magic was untested. Every year, Santa held a series of trials to select the 8 reindeer who would pull his sleigh on Christmas Eve. Rudy had been practicing for months, determined to prove he had what it took. But something always seemed to go wrong. Too fast. Santa's voice echoed in Rudy's memory from last year's trials. You've got to work with the team, Rudy. It's not just about speed. Rudy sighed. Teamwork wasn't his strong suit. He loved flying on his own, feeling the wind rush through his fur and the freedom of the open sky. But deep down, he longed to be part of something bigger. To hear Santa call his name as the sleigh lifted off into the starry Christmas Eve sky. As Rudy practiced, the sky began to darken. Thick clouds rolled in, and the wind picked up, tugging at his fur. Snowflakes swirled around him, growing heavier by the second. I'd better head back, Rudy thought, turning toward Santa's village. But as he flew, the storm intensified. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, and the snow blinded him, turning the world into a swirling blur of white. Stay calm, Rudy told himself. I just need to find the North Star. He squinted into the storm, searching for the bright, steady light that would guide him home. But the clouds were too thick. Panic began to creep in. The village seemed farther away with every passing moment, and Rudy's wings felt heavy from the snow. Finally, exhausted and disoriented, Rudy spotted a faint glow on the horizon. It wasn't the North Star, but it was something. With the last of his strength, he flew toward it, hoping it would lead him to safety. The glow turned out to be a small cabin nestled in the woods. Smoke curled from the chimney, and warm light spilled from the windows, casting golden pools on the snow. Rudy landed awkwardly in front of the cabin, his legs trembling from the effort. "Hello," he called, his voice barely audible over the wind. He approached the door and knocked gently with his hoof. The door creaked open, and a little girl peeked out. She had rosy cheeks, bright blue eyes, and a knit hat that looked several sizes too big for her head. "Oh my goodness," she gasped. "A reindeer. Are you one of Santa's?" Rudy hesitated. "Not yet," he admitted. "But I'm trying to be. I got caught in the storm and lost my way." The girl's face lit up. Come in, come in. You must be freezing." Rudy stepped inside, shaking the snow from his fur. The cabin was cozy and warm, with a crackling fire and the faint scent of gingerbread. The girl's parents were seated at a wooden table, their faces lighting up with surprise at the sight of their unusual guest. "This is Rudy," the girl announced proudly. "He's going to be one of Santa's reindeer someday." Her parents exchanged amused smiles. "Well, Rudy," said her father, "you're welcome to stay here until the storm passes. It's too dangerous to fly in weather like this." "Thank you," Rudy said, his voice soft with gratitude. He settled near the fire, feeling warmth seep into his frozen limbs. The girl brought him a blanket, which she draped over his back, and then plopped down beside him. "I'm Ellie," she said. "And this is my mom and dad. We're kind of new here. We moved to the North Pole last year. My dad works in Santa's workshop." Rudy's ears perked up. "The workshop? That's amazing. What does he do?" Ellie's dad chuckled. "I'm one of the toy designers. But I'm guessing you're more interested in the reindeer stables, huh?" Rudy nodded eagerly. "I've been training for years. I haven't quite figured out how to be part of the team yet." Ellie tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Rudy sighed. "I'm fast, and I love flying, but I don't know how to match my rhythm with the others. I'm always out of sync." Ellie frowned thoughtfully. "Maybe you just need to practice with a partner." Rudy opened his mouth to respond, but before he could say anything, there was a loud crash outside. The ground shook, and the fire flickered as a gust of wind blew through the cabin. "What was that?" Ellie whispered. Her father stood and peered out the window. His face turned pale. "It's the sleigh," he exclaimed. "Something's wrong. It's landed in the forest." Rudy shot to his feet. "Santa's sleigh." Her father nodded. "It must have been caught in the storm. We need to help him." Without waiting for further explanation, Rudy dashed outside, the snow whipping against his face. Ellie and her parents followed, bundling up in thick coats and scarves. Together they trudged through the snow toward the forest, where a faint glow marked the location of the sleigh. When they reached it, Rudy's heart sank. The sleigh was tilted on its side, its runners buried in the snow. A large sack of toys lay scattered across the ground, and several of the reindeer were tangled in their harnesses. Santa himself was standing nearby, trying to calm the panicked reindeer. His red suit was dusted with snow, and his usually jolly face was lined with worry. "Santa," Rudy called, racing to his side. "Are you okay?" Santa turned, his eyes widening in surprise. "Rudy, what are you doing out here?" "I got caught in the storm," Rudy explained quickly. "But never mind that. How can I help?" Santa hesitated for only a moment before nodding. We need to get the sleigh upright and untangle the reindeer. But we'll have to hurry. The storm is getting worse, and we're running out of time. Rudy's heart pounded. This was his chance. A chance to prove that he could be part of the team. He squared his shoulders and turned to Ellie and her parents. Can you help with the toys? I'll take care of the reindeer. Ellie saluted dramatically. You got it. As the family began gathering the scattered toys, Rudy approached the harnessed reindeer. He spoke to them in a soothing voice, carefully untangling the straps and checking for injuries. The other reindeer watched him with a mix of curiosity and respect. When the sleigh was finally upright and the toys were safely loaded, Santa placed a hand on Rudy's shoulder. You've done well, my boy, he said warmly. But we're still short a reindeer. One of the team was injured in the crash, and we need all 8 to fly the sleigh. Rudy's breath caught. You mean you want me to help? Santa smiled. Only if you're ready. Rudy looked at Ellie, who gave him a thumbs up. He took a deep breath, his heart swelling with determination. I'm ready. Rudy stood tall next to Santa's sleigh, his breath visible in the frigid air as the storm howled around them. The other reindeer shifted nervously, their harnesses jingling as they glanced at him. This was Rudy's moment, the chance he had dreamed of for years, but he couldn't shake the tight knot of nerves in his chest. All right, team, Santa called out, his voice booming despite the storm. Let's work together and show Christmas what we're made of. Rudy, take the 8th position. Follow my lead, and remember, teamwork is key. Rudy nodded, stepping into the vacant spot in the harness line. The reindeer beside him, Dasher, gave him a quick glance and whispered, You've got this, kid. Just keep the pace steady. The encouragement steadied Rudy's nerves a little. He took a deep breath, feeling the harness straps settle on his shoulders, and planted his hooves firmly in the snow. He looked back at Ellie, who was waving excitedly with both hands. Her smile was infectious, and Rudy felt a surge of determination. Santa climbed into the sleigh, his red coat bright against the swirling snow. All right, team. On my count. 1, 2, 3. Lift off. The reindeer leaped forward as one, their hooves kicking up sprays of snow. Rudy pushed off with all his strength, his wings snapping open to catch the wind. The sleigh surged upward, the runners leaving the ground as the team lifted into the sky. At first, Rudy struggled to find his rhythm. The storm tugged at his wings, and the sleigh felt heavier than he had expected. But he focused on Dasher's movements, matching his wing beats to the older reindeer's pace. Slowly, the chaos around him began to fade as the team settled into a steady rhythm. Good, Rudy, Santa called from the sleigh. Stay with them. Just like that. Rudy's chest swelled with pride. He could feel the magic of the sleigh coursing through him, a warm, shimmering energy that connected him to the other reindeer. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. A sense of unity, of being part of something bigger than himself. But the storm wasn't letting up. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, and snowflakes lashed against Rudy's face, stinging like tiny needles. The sleigh rocked dangerously as the team struggled to stay on course. Steady, team, Santa called. We're almost through this. Rudy squinted into the blizzard, his eyes searching for any sign of clear skies. Suddenly, a flash of light caught his attention. It wasn't the warm glow of the North Star. It was something colder, sharper. He turned his head, and his heart skipped a beat. A jagged mountain loomed ahead, its icy peaks barely visible through the snow. The sleigh was heading straight for it. Santa! Rudy shouted. The mountain. Look out. Santa's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the danger. Hang on, he bellowed. Dasher, veer left. Rudy, help guide the sleigh. Rudy's wings ached from the effort, but he pushed harder, angling himself to pull the sleigh away from the mountain. The other reindeer followed his lead, their movements perfectly synchronized. The sleigh tilted sharply, and Rudy felt the rush of icy wind against his side as they skimmed past the jagged rocks. "Phew!" Santa exclaimed. "That was close. Good eyes, Rudy." Rudy's heart raced, but he couldn't help smiling. For the first time, he felt like he truly belonged. The team had trusted him, and he had come through. The relief was short-lived, though. The storm was growing even fiercer, and the sleigh was losing altitude. The reindeer were exhausted, their breaths coming in labored puffs of steam. Rudy's muscles burned with effort, but he refused to give up. "Santa," he called, his voice barely audible over the wind. "We can't keep this up much longer." Santa's face was grim. "We need to find shelter. Keep your eyes peeled for a safe landing spot." Rudy scanned the snowy landscape below, his sharp eyes searching for anything that could provide shelter. After what felt like an eternity, he spotted a faint glow in the distance. It wasn't warm and golden like the lights of the North Pole. It was pale and silvery, like moonlight on snow. "There," he shouted, pointing with his hoof. "I see something. Over there." Santa followed Rudy's gaze, his eyes narrowing. "Good work, Rudy. Let's check it out." But the team angled toward the light, their movements slow and deliberate as they descended. As they drew closer, the glow resolved into a strange, shimmering dome of ice. It was beautiful and otherworldly, its surface glittering like 1,000 diamonds. The sleigh touched down softly on the snow outside the dome, and the reindeer collapsed into the snow, panting heavily. Santa climbed out of the sleigh, his expression wary as he approached the dome. "What is this place?" Rudy asked, his voice hushed. "I'm not sure," Santa admitted. "But it's warm inside. I can feel it." Ellie's father, who had been holding on tight during the flight, stepped forward. "I've heard stories about places like this. They say they're created by ancient magic. Safe havens for travelers lost in the storm." Santa nodded thoughtfully. "Well, let's hope the stories are true. We need to rest before we can continue." As they stepped inside the dome, Rudy felt an immediate change. The air was warm and still, and the light inside had a soft, bluish glow. The walls were smooth and curved, like the inside of a giant crystal. In the center of the dome was a small, circular pool of water, its surface perfectly still. Surrounding the pool were tiny figures, creatures no bigger than squirrels, with wings like dragonflies and shimmering silver skin. "Welcome," one of the creatures said, its voice like the tinkling of bells. "You are safe here." Santa stepped forward, his expression one of wonder. "Thank you, friends. We are in your debt." The creature smiled. "Rest now. Your journey is not yet over. But you will find the strength to continue." Rudy lay down near the edge of the pool, his body relaxing for the first time since the flight began. The tiny creatures brought food and water for the reindeer, their movements swift and graceful. As Rudy drifted off to sleep, he couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. They had survived the storm, and he had proven himself to Santa and the team. But deep down he knew their journey wasn't over. Christmas was still at stake, and they would need every ounce of courage and determination to complete their mission. Rudy woke to a soft, tinkling sound, like tiny bells ringing in harmony. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment he forgot where he was. The shimmering dome of ice glowed softly, and the air was warm and soothing. The small, winged creatures flitted around the pool in the center, their silvery forms leaving trails of sparkling light. He stretched his aching legs and wings, glancing at the rest of the team. The other reindeer were still resting, their breath slow and steady. Santa sat by the pool, speaking quietly with one of the creatures. "You're awake," a melodic voice said. Rudy turned to see Ellie standing nearby, bundled in her coat but looking cheerful. "The little ice fairies have been taking care of us." I think they really like you, Rudy. Rudy blinked. Why? They said you're special, Ellie explained. That you have a light inside you, like the North Star. Rudy felt his cheeks flush. I'm just trying to help. Ellie smiled. And you're doing an amazing job. Santa stood, brushing off his coat. All right, team, time to move out. We've got presents to deliver, and the storm isn't going to wait for us. The reindeer groaned as they stretched and shook off the last traces of fatigue. Rudy felt a newfound strength coursing through him, as if the rest and the fairies' magic had rekindled his energy. Before they left, the leader of the fairies approached Santa and handed him a small, glowing orb. This will guide you through the storm, she said, but only if you trust in each other. Santa nodded gratefully. Thank you for your kindness. The team harnessed up again, and Rudy took his place in the 8th position. Ellie and her father climbed into the sleigh, wrapping themselves in thick blankets. Ready, Rudy? Dasher asked with a grin. Rudy nodded firmly. Ready. As they soared into the sky, the storm seemed fiercer than ever. The winds howled, and the snow fell in thick, blinding sheets. Rudy narrowed his eyes, focusing on the glowing orb in Santa's hand. It pulsed gently, its light cutting through the darkness like a beacon. Stay close, everyone, Santa called. Follow the light. The team pushed forward, their movements synchronized and steady. Rudy felt the strain in his wings, but he didn't falter. He kept his eyes on the orb and his heart on the mission. This was about more than proving himself. It was about saving Christmas. Suddenly, the orb flared brightly, and the storm seemed to part like a curtain. They found themselves in a calm, clear space, the stars shining brightly above. The North Star twinkled directly ahead, guiding them toward their destination. We're through, Santa shouted, his voice filled with relief. Great job, everyone. The reindeer cheered, their bells jingling merrily. Rudy let out a whoop of joy, his heart soaring as high as the sleigh. But their journey wasn't over yet. There were still presents to deliver. As they reached the first town, Rudy's jaw dropped. The streets were blanketed in snow, and the rooftops sparkled like frosting on gingerbread houses. Tiny lights twinkled in the windows, and a hush lay over the world, as if it were holding its breath. Santa guided the sleigh down gently, landing on the first rooftop. He reached into his sack, pulling out gifts with practiced ease. All right, team, he said. Let's make this quick. We've got a lot of ground to cover. One by one, the reindeer carried the sleigh from house to house. Rudy marveled at the efficiency of the operation. Santa moved with surprising agility for someone his size, slipping down chimneys and back again in the blink of an eye. As the night went on, Rudy began to feel the weight of the task. His wings ached, and his legs trembled from the strain. But every time he thought about giving up, he reminded himself of the children waiting for their presents, their dreams of a magical Christmas morning. As they approached the final town, Santa turned to Rudy with a twinkle in his eye. This next stop is yours, Rudy. Rudy's eyes widened. Mine. But why? Santa chuckled. Because you've earned it. This house belongs to a little boy who wrote a letter asking for a Christmas miracle. I think you're the perfect reindeer to deliver it. But Rudy felt a lump in his throat as he guided the sleigh down to the snowy yard. Santa handed him a small package wrapped in bright red paper, tied with a golden bow. Go on, Santa said. You've got this. Rudy hesitated for a moment, then took the package carefully in his teeth. He fluttered down to the porch, his hooves landing softly on the snow-dusted steps. He placed the gift gently by the door, then used his hoof to knock softly before taking off into the sky. As he rejoined the team, he couldn't help glancing back. The door of the house creaked open, and a small boy stepped out, his eyes lighting up as he saw the package. He looked up at the sky, his face filled with wonder. Rudy felt his heart swell. This was what Christmas was all about. As the sun began to rise, the sleigh touched down at the North Pole, the reindeer collapsing into the snow with exhausted but happy sighs. Ellie ran over to Rudy, throwing her arms around his neck. "You did it," she exclaimed. "You saved Christmas." Santa stepped down from the sleigh, his eyes twinkling as he approached Rudy. "You've got a special gift, Rudy. Not just your wings, but your heart. You reminded us all of the magic of Christmas." The other reindeer cheered, and Rudy felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fairies' magic. He had found his place, not just in the team, but in the spirit of Christmas itself. As the North Pole buzzed with celebration, Rudy looked up at the sky, where the North Star still shone brightly. He smiled, knowing that he had become a part of something truly magical. A Christmas story that would be remembered forever. The birth of the magical snowflake, high above the world, in the shimmering skies of the North Pole, Santa's workshop buzzed with activity. The scent of peppermint and gingerbread filled the frosty air as elves darted back and forth, putting finishing touches on toys, wrapping presents and polishing sleigh bells. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, each flake a unique masterpiece of icy lace. However, this wasn't an ordinary snowfall. In a hidden corner of the North Pole, where the aurora borealis painted the sky with its ethereal glow, a magical blizzard swirled to life. This blizzard was no accident, it was Santa's doing. Once every century, he summoned this enchanted storm to create snowflakes infused with Christmas magic. Tiny, sparkling wonders that carried the spirit of joy, hope, and wonder to the world below. The birth of Spark amid the chaos of the storm. One particular snowflake formed unlike any other. It shimmered with a radiant glow, casting tiny rainbows as it floated in the icy wind. The snowflake twirled and danced, alive with energy. Unlike the others, it didn't fall quietly. It hummed softly, a sound like the jingling of distant sleigh bells. As it hovered in the magical blizzard, a voice boomed gently from the heavens. It was Santa. "Ah, a special one you are," Santa said, gazing fondly at the tiny snowflake. "I'll call you Spark because you shine brighter than the rest. And you, little one, will carry a special gift, the power to grant wishes to those pure of heart." Spark glowed even brighter, feeling the weight of Santa's words. "But remember," Santa continued, "your magic must be used wisely. A wish can bring great joy, but it can also bring challenges. Trust your heart to guide you." With that, Santa blew gently, and the magical blizzard scattered its snowflakes across the world, each one destined to touch a life. Spark was among them, twirling through the cold night air, ready for its journey. A lonely boy far below, in a quiet little town nestled in the hills, a young boy named Leo sat on the steps of his small house. The world around him was blanketed in snow, but the warmth and laughter of Christmas seemed to have missed his home. Leo was a kind-hearted boy, but his life hadn't been easy. His father worked long hours at the factory, and his mother had passed away a few years ago. Though Leo tried to stay cheerful, the absence of Christmas cheer weighed heavily on him. His house had no tree, no lights, and no gifts. As he looked up at the stars, his breath forming little clouds in the cold air, Leo sighed. "I wish I could have a real Christmas," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Just once, unbeknownst to him, Spark was drifting closer, drawn by the purity of his wish. The meeting spark floated through the snowy sky, its glow faint but warm, like a tiny star. As it descended, it caught sight of Leo sitting on the steps. Something about the boy's expression, a mix of longing and quiet hope, pulled Spark toward him. Gently, Spark landed on the boy's mitten. Leo blinked, startled by the sudden glow emanating from his hand. What are you?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder. "I'm Spark." The snowflake replied in a tinkling voice, its edges glinting like tiny diamonds. You can talk, Leo asked, his eyes wide. Only to those who truly believe in the magic of Christmas. Spark said with a soft laugh. And I've come to grant your wish. Leo's heart raced. You mean you can really make my wish come true? Spark twirled in a tiny circle. Yes, but only if you promise to use the magic wisely. Wishes can be powerful, and they often lead to unexpected adventures. Leo hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I promise. The adventure begins as soon as Leo agreed. Spark began to glow brighter. The world around them shimmered, as if covered in a blanket of stardust. The snow on the ground sparkled, and the air seemed to hum with energy. What's happening? Leo asked, clutching his mitten tightly. Your wish is powerful, Spark explained. But to make it come true, we'll need to journey to the heart of Christmas. The heart of Christmas. It's the source of all Christmas magic, Spark said. It lies deep within the North Pole, hidden in a place called the Crystal Cavern. If we can reach it, your wish will come true. Leo's eyes widened with a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had never left his little town, and now he was being asked to embark on a journey to the North Pole. But how will we get there? He asked. Before Spark could answer, a sudden gust of wind swirled around them. From the snowy sky descended a majestic reindeer, its antlers adorned with tiny bells that jingled melodiously. This is Blitzen, Spark said. He'll take us to the North Pole. Blitzen knelt down, and Leo climbed onto his back, clutching Spark tightly in his mitten. The reindeer's fur was soft and warm, and Leo felt a thrill of anticipation as Blitzen took off into the night sky. Through the winter night, the journey was breathtaking. Leo and Spark soared above snowy landscapes, twinkling villages, and icy forests. The air was crisp and filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. As they flew, Spark explained more about the heart of Christmas. It's a magical crystal that holds the spirit of the season. Joy, love, and kindness. But it's protected by challenges that test whether those seeking it are worthy. Challenges, Leo echoed, gripping Blitzen's reins a little tighter. Don't worry, Spark reassured him. You've already shown your kind heart. That's the most important thing. Leo nodded, determination replacing his fear. Arrival at the North Pole after hours of flight, the North Pole came into view. It was a dazzling sight. A land of ice and snow illuminated by shimmering lights that danced across the sky. Santa's workshop stood at the center, its windows glowing warmly. But Blitzen didn't land at the workshop. Instead, he veered toward a hidden groove where a sparkling ice cave awaited. This is the entrance to the Crystal Cavern, Spark said as they landed. Leo slid off Blitzen's back, his breath visible in the frosty air. He looked at the cave's entrance, feeling both awed and apprehensive. Are you ready? Spark asked. Its glow steady and reassuring. Leo took a deep breath and nodded. I'm ready. As they stepped into the cave, the air around them seemed to shimmer with magic, and Leo knew that his adventure was only just beginning. The challenges of the Crystal Cavern. Leo's heart thudded in his chest as he stepped into the Crystal Cavern. The walls shimmered with ice crystals, each one refracting the light from Spark's gentle glow. The cave seemed alive, humming with energy, as if it recognized their presence. This place is incredible, Leo whispered, his breath fogging in the cold air. Spark twirled above his mitten. It's beautiful, but remember, the heart of Christmas is hidden deep within. To reach it, we must pass through the cavern's challenges. Leo squared his shoulders. I'm ready. The path of kindness, the first challenge, revealed itself as they entered a large, circular chamber. In the center stood a frozen fountain, its icy spouts shimmering like glass. Around the fountain were 3 life-sized ice sculptures of children, each with a forlorn expression. What are these? Leo asked, walking closer. This is the path of kindness, Spark explained. The sculptures represent children who've lost their belief in the magic of Christmas. To move forward, you must help them remember the joy and love of the season. Leo frowned, unsure how to begin. Then, as if on cue, the first sculpture began to glow faintly. A soft voice echoed through the chamber. I miss my family. Christmas doesn't feel the same without them. Leo's chest tightened. He remembered how lonely he'd felt after his mother passed away, and he realized this sculpture was asking for comfort. Kneeling before it, he spoke gently. Christmas isn't just about who's around the tree. It's about keeping their love in your heart, he said. Even if they're far away, they're still with you in spirit. The sculpture's icy surface began to melt, revealing a glowing figure of a smiling child. The second sculpture spoke next. I don't have fancy gifts like everyone else. I feel left out. Leo thought about the years his family couldn't afford presents, and he smiled gently. The best gifts aren't bought in stores. They're things like laughter, kindness, and time spent with loved ones. You don't need fancy gifts to have a special Christmas. As he spoke, the second sculpture melted, revealing another glowing child with a joyful expression. The third sculpture trembled slightly before whispering, I don't believe in magic anymore. Leo paused. How could he convince someone to believe in magic? Then he realized the answer was simple. You don't have to see magic to believe in it, he said. It's in the little things, the twinkle of lights, the warmth of a hug, the kindness of a stranger. Christmas magic is everywhere, if you're willing to look. The third sculpture melted, and the final glowing child appeared. All three figures joined hands and vanished in a burst of golden light. Well done, Leo, Spark said, glowing brighter. You passed the first challenge. The puzzle of patience, the next chamber was vastly different. It was filled with floating ice platforms, each one spinning slowly above a chasm that seemed to go on forever. Above the platforms, icicles hung like jagged teeth, a dripping water that froze into glittering beads mid-air. Leo hesitated. How do we get across? Spark floated to the nearest platform. This is the puzzle of patience. The platforms move in a specific pattern. If you jump too quickly, you'll fall. Watch carefully and time your steps. Leo took a deep breath and studied the platforms. They rotated at different speeds, some stopping momentarily before resuming their spin. He watched the pattern closely, his heart pounding as he tried to map out a safe path. Finally, he stepped onto the first platform. It wobbled slightly, but he held his balance. From there, he leaped to the next, then the next, each time waiting for the perfect moment. About halfway across, a platform he was aiming for spun out of reach. He teetered on his current platform, panic rising. Stay calm, Spark encouraged. Patience will guide you. Leo steadied himself, taking a deep breath. He waited for the platforms to realign and then made the leap. After what felt like an eternity, he landed safely on the other side. His legs were trembling, but a sense of pride filled him. You did it, Spark cheered. The trial of true desire, the final chamber, was the most intimidating. At its center stood a massive, glowing crystal, the heart of Christmas. Its light bathed the room in warmth and colors, but between Leo and the crystal lay a swirling mist. What's this? Leo asked, squinting into the fog. This is the trial of true desire, Spark said. The mist will show you visions, testing whether your wish comes from a pure heart. You must confront what you see and hold on to your true desire. Leo nodded, stepping into the mist. Immediately, the world around him shifted. The vision of temptation. In the first vision, Leo found himself in a grand mansion filled with luxuries he'd only dreamed of. A towering Christmas tree adorned with golden ornaments, piles of presents wrapped in glittering paper, and a table laden with a feast fit for a king. This could all be yours, a voice whispered. You could wish for riches and live in comfort forever. Leo's heart ached at the sight. He'd always wanted to give his father a better life, free from the long hours and hard work. But then he remembered something Spark had said: wishes must be used wisely. No, he said firmly. I don't need riches to be happy. My wish is for Christmas magic, to bring joy to my family and others. The mansion dissolved, replaced by a new vision. The vision of doubt. Leo was back in his small house, but everything felt off. The tree was dark, the presents were missing, and his father sat at the table with a wary expression. Why bother with Christmas? The voice taunted. It's just another day. Leo's chest tightened. He had felt this way before, after his mother's passing. But he also remembered the little things that kept the spirit alive: singing carols with his father, building snowmen in the yard, and sharing hot cocoa on cold nights. Christmas isn't just a day, he said. It's a feeling, a reminder of love and hope. I won't give up on it. The vision faded, and the mist began to clear. Reaching the heart, Lee stepped forward, his resolve unshaken. The heart of Christmas glowed brighter as he approached, its warmth spreading through the chamber. You've done well, Spark said, floating beside him. Your wish will be granted. Leo placed his hands on the crystal, and a surge of light engulfed him. He felt a rush of joy, love, and magic, as if the spirit of Christmas itself was wrapping him in its embrace. Thank you, he whispered, tears in his eyes. As the light faded, he found himself back outside the cavern, Blitzen waiting patiently. What happens now? Leo asked, looking at Spark. You'll see soon enough, Spark replied with a knowing smile. A Christmas wish come true. Leo's breath frosted in the icy air as he emerged from the crystal cavern. The heart of Christmas had filled him with a warm, glowing energy, but he wasn't sure what would happen next. Blitzen pawed at the snow impatiently, his jingling harness a cheerful contrast to the silent, snowy forest. Did it work? Leo asked, glancing at Spark, who hovered beside him, her glow brighter than ever. It's not about whether it worked, Spark said with a wink. It's about believing that it will. Leo looked down at the snowflake charm still in his mitten. Its intricate design shimmered with a faint, magical glow. I believe, he said softly, tucking the charm safely into his pocket. The journey home, as they traveled back through the forest, Leo noticed the world seemed brighter. The snow sparkled as if it held a piece of the heart's magic, and the trees whispered gently in the wind. Blitzen led them swiftly, his antlers gleaming in the moonlight. Lee's thoughts turned to his father. He hoped with all his heart that this Christmas would bring the joy and wonder they both so deeply missed. The weight of his wish filled him with both anticipation and a flicker of doubt. Do you think I'll see her? Leo whispered, almost afraid to ask. Spark floated closer, her light casting a soft glow on his face. A Christmas magic works in unexpected ways. Trust in your wish, Leo. A home transformed. When they reached Leo's house, he could hardly believe his eyes. The small, humble home glowed with a warmth he hadn't seen in years. Twinkling lights lined the roof, their colors dancing against the snow. The old pine tree in the yard, usually bare and unadorned, was now a dazzling Christmas tree with ornaments that shimmered like tiny stars. What happened? Leo breathed, his heart racing. Blitzen gave a soft snort as if to say, you'll see. Leo pushed open the door and his jaw dropped. The living room, once simple and quiet, was alive with Christmas cheer. A roaring fire crackled in the hearth, filling the room with a golden glow. Stockings hung above the fireplace, and a table was set with a feast that smelled of roasted turkey, fresh baked pies, and spiced cider. Dad, Leo called, stepping inside. A father's surprise, his father appeared from the kitchen, his face lit with a joy Leo hadn't seen in years. Leo, there you are, he exclaimed, rushing to embrace him. Leo hugged him tightly, tears stinging his eyes. "Dad, how did all this happen?" His father laughed, a deep, warm sound. "I don't know. I went out to gather firewood, and when I came back, the house looked like this." "It's a Christmas miracle." Leo pulled back, his heart pounding. He glanced at Spark, who hovered near the window, her glow faint now. "It's not just the decorations, Dad," Leo said. "It's the magic of Christmas. I made a wish and it's come true." His father frowned slightly but then smiled. "Whatever it is, I'm just glad to see you so happy, son. That's the real gift." A magical guest. Just as Leo was about to explain further, there was a knock at the door. He exchanged a puzzled look with his father before hurrying to open it. Standing on the snowy porch was a woman with kind eyes and a radiant smile. She wore a long, emerald-green cloak that shimmered in the moonlight, and her hair glowed softly, as if kissed by starlight. "Leo," she said warmly, her voice carrying a melodic quality. Who are you?" Leo stammered, though something about her felt familiar. "I'm the keeper of Christmas," she said. "I guard its magic and ensure it touches the hearts of those who need it most." Leo's eyes widened. "You're real," she laughed softly. "Yes, and you've done something remarkable, Leo. By passing the challenges and making your wish, you've brought the true spirit of Christmas back to your home." His father stepped forward, his brow furrowed in awe. "Is this really happening?" The keeper placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's as real as the love you share with your son. Christmas magic thrives on belief, and your family has kept that belief alive, even in hard times." A wish fulfilled, the keeper of Christmas reached into her cloak and pulled out a small, glowing orb. "Leo, your wish was selfless and pure. You asked for joy and love, not just for yourself, but for others. As a reward, I have one more gift for you." Leo's breath caught as the orb floated toward him. It hovered in the air before expanding into a swirl of light. The light coalesced into a figure, familiar and beloved. "Mom," Leo whispered, his voice breaking. His mother's form appeared, glowing softly like a star. She smiled at him, her eyes filled with warmth and pride. "My sweet boy," she said, her voice like a melody. "I've always been with you, watching over you. I'm so proud of the person you've become." Tears streamed down Leo's face. "I miss you so much." "I know," she said gently. "But you've kept my love alive in your heart. That's what matters most." The light around her began to fade, and she looked at both Leo and his father. "Merry Christmas, my loves. Never stop believing in the magic of this season." With that, she vanished, leaving behind a warmth that filled the entire room. A Christmas to remember. Leo and his father stood together, tears in their eyes but hearts full of joy. The keeper of Christmas smiled. "Your family's love will always keep the magic alive. Treasure it." Before Lee could thank her, she disappeared in a flurry of snowflakes. As the night went on, Leo and his father laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed their Christmas feast. The snowflake charm in Leo's pocket glowed softly, a reminder of the incredible journey he'd taken. "This really is the best Christmas ever," Leo said, leaning back in his chair with a contented sigh. His father nodded, smiling warmly. "And it's all thanks to you, son." The stars outside twinkled brighter than ever, as if celebrating the magic that had returned to their little home. The Christmas treasure hunt. Clara, and the map of wishes. The mysterious map. Clara Whitmore was a bright-eyed girl of 11, with curly auburn hair and a curious mind that never seemed to rest. It was the day before Christmas Eve, and the town of Everpine was alive with the hum of the holidays. Snow blanketed the rooftops, strings of colorful lights twinkled along fences, and the aroma of freshly baked gingerbread wafted through every street. Clara, however, wasn't in town to soak up the festivities. She was exploring the attic of her grandmother's old house, a creaky, dusty place filled with mysterious trunks, forgotten knickknacks, and books that seemed centuries old. "What are you up to now, Clara?" Her younger brother, Henry, called from the trapdoor at the bottom of the ladder. "Looking for adventure," Clara declared, brushing cobwebs off a wooden chest. "Mom said we're supposed to help with the cookies." Henry reminded her, but Clara waved him off. "In a minute," she said, her hands carefully unlatching the old chest. It creaked open, revealing a tangle of faded ribbons, brittle papers, and something that immediately caught her eye. A rolled-up parchment sealed with red wax. "What's that?" Henry asked, climbing up the ladder despite himself. Clara gently broke the seal and unrolled the parchment. Her eyes widened as she scanned the intricate illustrations and hand-drawn markings. "It's a treasure map?" Clara breathed. A Christmas mystery. Henry peered over her shoulder, his face lighting up with excitement. "A treasure map? Really?" "Look at this," Clara said, pointing to the map's title. In looping script, it read, "The Map of Christmas Wishes." "Do you think it's real?" Henry asked, his voice trembling with a mix of doubt and hope. Clara tapped her chin thoughtfully. "It has to be. Why else would it be hidden up here? And look, this mark," she said, pointing to a snowflake symbol etched near the center of the map. "It's right where the old town square is." Henry frowned. "But the square is just a bunch of shops and the Christmas tree." "Maybe," Clara said, her eyes sparkling. "Or maybe it's hiding something incredible." Clues and preparations. The map wasn't just a simple drawing, it was a riddle. Next to each marked location was a short verse, written in rhymes. For the old town square, it read, "Where the stars align on a frosty night, seek the tree that gleams with light. Beneath its branches dig with care, a secret treasure lies hidden there." "We have to go," Clara said, rolling up the map with determination. "Now." "But it's almost dark," Henry protested. "All the better. The stars will be out," Clara said, already heading for the ladder. They bundled up in their warmest coats, scarves, and mittens and snuck out of the house. The snow crunched beneath their boots as they made their way to the town square, the map clutched tightly in Clara's hands. The first clue, the square was beautiful that night. The giant Christmas tree stood in the center, its ornaments glittering like jewels, and its lights twinkling like 1,000 tiny stars. Clara and Henry circled the tree, studying it from every angle. "Do you think it's really here?" Henry whispered. "There's only one way to find out," Clara said. She crouched down near the base of the tree and began to dig in the snow with her gloved hands. "Wait, what's this?" Henry said, noticing something sticking out of the snow on the opposite side. He pulled it free and gasped. It was a small wooden box, intricately carved with snowflakes and holly. Clara hurried over as Henry opened the box, revealing a single golden key and another parchment inside. Clara unrolled the parchment. The next clue read, "Through the woods where the reindeer roam, find the cabin that feels like home. A hearth that burns with Yuletide cheer will guide you to the treasure near." "Into the forest, the woods," Henry said nervously. "At night. We've got Blitzen." Clara reminded him, pointing to the family's old sleigh in the corner of the square. It was tied to a curious little reindeer with a slightly crooked antler. A reindeer the Whitmores had taken in as a stray the year before. Blitzen snorted and pawed the ground, as if he'd been waiting for this adventure all along. "Come on, Henry," Clara said, her confidence unwavering. Reluctantly, Henry climbed into the sleigh, and they set off toward the woods. The snow-covered trees sparkled under the moonlight, their branches heavy with frost. Blitzen trotted through the forest with surprising ease, as if he knew exactly where to go. "Do you think the treasure will be big?" Henry asked as they rode. "Like piles of gold and jewels." "Maybe," Clara said. But maybe it's something even better. The cabin in the woods, after what felt like hours, they spotted a soft orange glow in the distance. It was a small cabin, just as the clue described, with smoke curling from its chimney and a wreath hanging on the door. "This has to be it," Clara said. Hopping out of the sleigh, they approached the cabin cautiously and peeked inside the frosted window. A fire crackled warmly in the hearth, and the room was cozy and inviting. On the mantel above the fireplace sat a single silver bell, glinting in the firelight. Clara opened the door and stepped inside, drawn to the bell. "Do you think it's part of the treasure?" Henry asked. Clara nodded, reaching out to pick it up. As soon as her fingers touched the bell, it rang softly, and a faint, melodious voice filled the room. "Your next clue awaits," the voice said. "Follow the sound of the Christmas chimes, and they will lead you to your final prize." The next step, the sound of chimes echoed through the forest, and Clara and Henry rushed outside, their hearts racing. Blitzen snorted and stamped, eager to continue the journey. "What do you think the final prize is?" Henry asked, climbing back into the sleigh. "I don't know," Clara admitted, clutching the silver bell tightly. "But I think we're about to find out." As Blitzen set off once more, the siblings followed the magical chimes, their excitement and wonder growing with each step. The chimes of the forest, the silver bell's faint, melodious ring lingered in the frosty air as Blitzen led Clara and Henry deeper into the enchanted forest. The woods, bathed in moonlight, glistened with a soft, magical shimmer. Snowflakes drifted lazuli down, and the distant sound of Christmas chimes echoed through the trees, beckoning them forward. "Do you hear that?" Henry asked, leaning forward in the sleigh. "The chimes," Clara said, holding the silver bell tightly. Henry shook his head. "No. It sounds like singing." Clara frowned and strained her ears. Sure enough, the faint sound of a chair singing a cheerful carol reached them. "Deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa la la lag." "It's coming from up ahead," Clara said, urging Blitzen to pick up his pace. The reindeer snorted and trotted faster, his crooked antler bouncing as he moved. The singing snowman, as they rounded a bend in the trail, they came upon the most delightful sight, a group of 5 snowmen standing in a perfect circle, their twig arms raised as they sang in harmony. Each snowman wore a festive scarf and hat, and one even held a tiny conductor's behaden made of candy cane. "Are they really singing?" Henry asked, his eyes wide. "It's Christmas magic," Clara whispered. Enchanted by the scene, the snowman stopped singing and turned to face the siblings. The conductor snowman tipped his hat and bowed. "Welcome, treasure seekers!" he said in a voice as crisp as winter air. "We've been expecting you." "You have?" Clara asked, stepping out of the sleigh. "Indeed," said another snowman with a green scarf. "The map of Christmas wishes has chosen you. But to proceed, you must solve our riddle." Clara and Henry exchanged a glance. "What kind of riddle?" Henry asked cautiously. The riddle challenged. The conductor snowman raised his candy cane baton dramatically. "Here is your riddle. I'm not alive, but I can grow. I need the cold, but hate the glow. In my heart a star may shine, but only when it's Christmas time. What am I?" Clara furrowed her brow, repeating the riddle in her mind. She paced back and forth, her boots crunching in the snow. Henry stared at the snowman nervously. "What happens if we get it wrong?" The snowman didn't answer, but their silent, expectant gazes made him shiver. Clara snapped her fingers. "I've got it," she said confidently. "The answer is a Christmas tree." The snowmen burst into applause, their twig arms clapping together. "Correct," the conductor snowman exclaimed. "Your reward awaits," said the snowman in the green scarf. He stepped aside to reveal a small chest buried halfway in the snow. A special gift. Clara and Henry rushed to the chest. Clara opened it eagerly, revealing a glowing ornament shaped like a golden star. "It's beautiful," Clara whispered, lifting the star out of the chest. It shimmered in her hands, casting a warm, golden light. The conductor Snowman cleared his throat. "This is no ordinary ornament," he explained. "Place it atop the tree at the edge of the north meadow, and your path will be revealed." "Thank you," Clara said, clutching the star tightly. "Good luck, young ones," the snowman said, tipping his hat once more. The north meadow with Blitzen leading the way. Clara and Henry soon reached the north meadow. It was a vast, open expanse blanketed in pristine snow. In the center stood a lone pine tree, its branches drooping under the weight of frost and icicles. "This must be the tree," Clara said, climbing out of the sleigh. She held up the golden star, its light illuminating the meadow. "Are you sure about this?" Henry asked, shivering slightly. "There's only one way to find out," Clara said. She climbed up onto the lower branches and carefully placed the star at the very top. As soon as the star was in place, it flared brightly, and the tree began to shake. Snow fell from its branches, and the icicles jingled like bells. A portal appears. The ground beneath the tree cracked open, revealing a swirling, golden portal. Clara and Henry stumbled back, staring in awe as the portal pulsed with light. "Is this part of the treasure?" Henry asked. "I think it's the way to the next clue," Clara said, her voice trembling with excitement. She turned to Blitzen, who snorted and pawed at the snow, as if urging them forward. "Are we really going in there?" Henry asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Clara nodded. "We've come this far. We can't stop now." Taking a deep breath, she grabbed Henry's hand, and together they stepped into the golden light. The world beyond, the sensation was like floating in warm, sparkling water. When they emerged on the other side, they found themselves in a dazzling winter wonderland. The snow here sparkled like diamonds, and the air was filled with the soft tinkling of bells. In the distance stood a grand, shimmering castle made entirely of ice and snow. Its towers stretched toward the sky, and its gates were adorned with holly and mistletoe. "Do you think the treasure is in there?" Henry asked, staring in awe. "Only one way to find out," Clara said, her heart racing with anticipation. They started toward the castle, the sound of Christmas chimes growing louder with every step. The heart of the castle, the shimmering ice castle, loomed larger as Clara, Henry, and Blitzen approached its grand gates. The air here was alive with magic. Sparkling snowflakes floated in a never-ending dance, and the faint music of Christmas chimes echoed from within. Blitzen stopped in front of the gates and stomped his hooves. "Do you think they'll just open?" Henry asked, eyeing the massive ice doors. "Only one way to find out," Clara said, stepping forward. She knocked gently, and the sound echoed like the peal of a bell. The gates creaked, then swung open with a rush of cold, fragrant air that smelled of pine and cinnamon. Inside was a dazzling hall filled with shimmering ice sculptures of reindeer, snowflakes, and Christmas trees. Strings of glowing ornaments hung from the icy ceiling, casting soft, colorful lights across the room. "Wow," Henry whispered, his eyes wide. Clara held tightly to Blitzen's reins. "Let's keep going," she said, her voice hushed in awe. The path of choices at the end of the hall, they came to 3 arched doorways. Above each was an inscription etched in golden icing. "Door 1, courage, leads to the heart of the treasure. Door 2, kindness, reveals what's hidden. Door 3, wisdom, lights the way." "Which one should we choose?" Henry asked, frowning. Clara thought for a moment. The map said we needed courage, kindness, and wisdom to find the treasure. Maybe we need to pass all 3 tests. Henry groaned. 3 tests. This treasure better be worth it. Blitzen nudged Clara gently, as if to encourage her. "We'll start with door 1, she said, pushing it open. Test of courage. The first door led them into a cavernous room with walls that shimmered like moonlight. In the center stood a massive bridge of ice stretching over a dark, bottomless chasm. "This doesn't look safe," Henry said, peering nervously over the edge. "Come on," Clara said, gripping his hand. "We have to try." Blitzen trotted confidently onto the bridge, his hooves clicking against the ice. Clara followed, keeping her eyes fixed on the far side. But halfway across, the bridge began to shake. A deep, rumbling voice echoed around them. "Do you have the courage to cross?" "Yes," Clara shouted, her heart pounding. Suddenly, gusts of icy wind whipped through the chasm, threatening to knock them off. Clara held tight to Blitzen's reins and pulled Henry closer. "Don't look down," she said firmly. Step by step, they inched forward until, finally, they reached the other side. The wind stopped, and the bridge solidified behind them. "You have proven your courage," the voice said. "Continue your journey." Test of kinness. The next room was smaller and warmer, lit by the soft glow of candles. In the center stood a frail old elf with a long, snowy beard and kind eyes. "Welcome, travelers," he said, his voice gentle. "I am in need of help. Will you spare your time for me?" Henry hesitated. "We're kind of in the middle of something." Clara nudged him. "Of course we'll help. What do you need?" The elf gestured to a pile of shattered ornaments at his feet. "These were the ornaments from my family tree. Can you help me put them back together?" Clara knelt and carefully picked up a broken piece. "We can do this," she said, smiling at Henry. They worked together, fitting the pieces of glass like a puzzle. Blitzen even helped by using his nose to nudge smaller shards into place. Slowly but surely, they restored each ornament until the tree was complete. The elf beamed. "You have shown great kindness. May your path be blessed." With a wave of his hand, the door to the final room opened. Test of wisdom. The third room was dark, save for a single pedestal in the center. On the pedestal sat 3 identical snow globes, each swirling with glittering snow. A voice echoed from the darkness. "One globe will guide you to the treasure. Choose wisely." Clara studied the snow globes carefully. "There has to be a clue," she said, furrowing her brow. Henry pointed to the pedestal. "Look, there's writing on the base." The inscription read, "The globe that holds the warmest heart will lead the way." Clara placed her hand over each globe in turn. The first was icy cold. The second was warm but faint. The third radiated a soft, comforting warmth. "This is the one," Clara said, lifting the third globe. As she did, the darkness melted away, revealing a glittering staircase leading upward. The heart of the treasure at the top of the staircase. Clara and Henry entered a grand hall, filled with Christmas wonders. There were piles of brightly wrapped presents, tables laden with steaming hot cocoa and gingerbread, and a massive Christmas tree that sparkled with ornaments. But at the center of the room was the true treasure, a glowing, heart-shaped crystal that pulsed with warmth and light. "This is it," Clara whispered, stepping forward. As she touched the crystal, a wave of warmth and joy spread through the room. A deep, soothing voice spoke. "You have found the heart of Christmas. Its magic will spread joy and kindness to all who believe." Blitzen let out a happy snort as the crystal's light grew brighter. The journey home, the treasure hunt complete, Clara and Henry returned to the forest with the heart of Christmas in hand. Blitzen led them back to their home, where the first rays of dawn were breaking. "Do you think the treasure will really spread Christmas magic?" Henry asked as they climbed out of the sleigh. Clara smiled, holding the crystal close. "I know it will." As they stepped inside, they found their parents waiting with hot cocoa and hugs. The magic of the heart filled their home, making it the warmest, most joyful Christmas they had ever known. And from that day forward, Clara and Henry knew they had truly found the greatest treasure of all. Quaint village of Snowbrook. Nestled deep within a valley blanketed by snow, there stood a small workshop. Its windows glowed warmly during the cold winter nights, and the sound of hammering and soft humming could often be heard from within. This was the home of Mr. Whittaker, the village toymaker. Mr. Whittaker was a gentle, elderly man with twinkling blue eyes and a beard as white as the snow outside. He spent his days crafting toys for the children of Snowbrook. Wooden trains, delicate dolls, and jack-in-the-boxes that always made the little ones giggle. Every child in the village adored him, and his toys were cherished by families far and wide. Yet, despite the joy he brought to others, Mr. Whittaker often felt a pang of loneliness during the holiday season. His children were grown and lived far away, and his beloved wife had passed many years ago. Christmas, for all its cheer, always brought a quiet ache to his heart. A special project one frosty morning, as the first snow of December fell gently on the rooftops, Mr. Whittaker sat at his workbench with an idea unlike any he'd ever had before. "I'll make something truly special this Christmas," he murmured to himself, stroking his beard thoughtfully. A toy unlike any other. He reached for a block of polished wood, brass gears, and shimmering paint. Over the next few days, he poured his heart and soul into the project. His hands moved with care, carving intricate details and fitting tiny gears into place. Slowly but surely, a beautiful clockwork girl began to take shape. Her body was made of polished wood. Her eyes were tiny blue gemstones that sparkled in the light, and her hair was crafted from golden threads. She wore a dress of soft fabric embroidered with tiny snowflakes. When he finished, Mr. Whittaker stepped back and admired his work. "Penny," he said softly, "that will be your name. The Christmas wish on Christmas Eve." After delivering his toys to the children in the village, Mr. Whittaker returned to his workshop, weary but content. Snow swirled outside, and the wind howled through the valley. He lit a single candle and placed it on the workbench beside Penny. "If only you could come to life," he whispered, his voice tinged with longing. "I've made so many toys over the years, but none of them could ever keep me company. Just once, I wish for a Christmas miracle." As he spoke, the clock on the wall chimed midnight. The candle flickered, casting strange, dancing shadows on the walls. Mr. Whittaker felt a strange warmth in the room, as though the cold wind outside had been replaced by a comforting embrace. And then it happened. A Christmas miracle. Penny's gemstone eyes sparkled brighter, and the tiny gears in her chest began to wear softly. Her wooden fingers twitched, and her head tilted ever so slightly. "Hello," a small, melodic voice said. Mr. Whittaker's heart nearly stopped. He leaned forward, his hands trembling. "Penny, is that you?" The little clockwork girl smiled, her painted lips curving gently. "Yes, it's me. Did you call for me, sir?" Tears welled in the old man's eyes. "It worked." "Oh, Penny, it worked! You're alive!" She climbed down from the workbench, her movements smooth and graceful despite her mechanical nature. "Thank you for making me, Mr. Whittaker," she said, taking his hand in her tiny wooden fingers. For the first time in years, the toymaker felt his loneliness melt away. He laughed, a deep, joyous sound that filled the workshop. The storm arrives. Their joy was short-lived, however. As the night wore on, the snowstorm outside grew fiercer. The wind howled like a restless beast, rattling the windows and piling snow against the doors. Suddenly, there was a frantic knock at the workshop door. Mr. Whittaker opened it to find Mrs. Hodge, the baker's wife, bundled in layers of wool. Her face was pale with worry. "Mr. Whittaker, it's terrible," she cried. "The storm is blocking the main road into the village. If it doesn't let up, the Christmas feast will be ruined. No one will be able to bring the supplies from the nearby town." Mr. Whittaker frowned. The Christmas feast was a cherished tradition in Snowbrook, a time when everyone came together to celebrate. Without it, The village's holiday cheer would surely fade. "Isn't there anything we can do?" he asked. Mrs. Hudge shook her head. "Not unless someone can clear the road by morning, and with this storm." She trailed off, looking hopeless. Penny tugged on Mr. Whittaker's sleeve. "Maybe we can help," she said brightly. "You?" Mrs. Hudge asked, her eyes widening as she noticed the little clockwork girl for the first time. "Yes," Penny said, her gears whirring with determination. "I may be small, but I'm very strong. And with Mr. Whittaker's help, I'm sure we can find a way." "A plan takes shape." Mrs. Hodge looked skeptical, but Mr. Whittaker smiled. "If Penny believes we can do it, then we'll try." Together, they devised a plan. Penny would help clear the snow from the road while Mr. Whittaker gathered tools from the workshop. Blitzen the reindeer, who had been resting in a nearby barn after delivering toys earlier, would pull a sled to help transport supplies. The storm howled louder as they prepared, but Penny's enthusiasm was infectious. "We can do this, Mr. Whittaker," she said, her gemstone eyes shining. "Christmas is worth it." With their plan set, they stepped out into the blizzard, braving the icy winds and deep drifts of snow. A blizzard adventure. The wind whipped through Snowbrook as Mr. Whittaker and Penny trudged into the night, their breath visible in the freezing air. Penny's tiny gears clicked steadily, her determination keeping her movements precise and strong despite the storm. Mr. Whittaker, wrapped in his heaviest coat and scarf, struggled to push a sled loaded with shovels, ropes, and lanterns. By their side trotted Blitzen, the retired reindeer who had once pulled Santa's sleigh before finding a quiet life in Snowbrook. Though no longer young, Blitzen had a sturdy build and an unyielding spirit, and his bells jingled faintly beneath the layers of snow piling on his back. "Penny, are you sure about this?" Mr. Whittaker called out over the howl of the wind. The little clockwork girl turned her gemstone eyes to him, her wooden face glowing with determination. "Of course, we can't let Christmas be ruined, Mr. Whittaker. The village needs us." The snowy battlefield, the road leading to the village, was barely visible under the thick blanket of snow. Drifts as high as fences blocked the way, and the icy winds made it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. "This is worse than I thought," Mr. Whittaker muttered, gripping his lantern tightly. Penny didn't hesitate. She grabbed a shovel from the sled and began digging into the snow with surprising efficiency. Her small size allowed her to move quickly, darting between drifts and clearing paths where the snow was deepest. The gears in her arms clicked rhythmically as she worked, the soft glow of her gemstone eyes cutting through the storm. Mr. Whittaker joined her, his old muscles straining against the frozen weight. Together, they cleared a narrow path, wide enough for Blitzen to pull the sled. The reindeer's powerful hooves dug into the snow, and he pushed forward with unwavering determination. Unexpected company as they made slow progress. A sudden movement in the snow caught Penny's attention. She paused, her wooden ears twitching as she heard a faint sound, like a soft whimper. "Mr. Whittaker, do you hear that?" she asked, pointing toward a nearby snowdrift. The toymaker stopped shoveling and listened. The sound came again, faint but unmistakable. It was the cry of an animal. Penny dashed toward the sound, her small feet leaving tiny prints in the snow. There, buried beneath a mound of white, she found a tiny fox cub shivering in the cold. Its bright orange fur was matted with ice, and its dark eyes looked up at her with a mix of fear and hope. "Oh, you poor thing," Penny exclaimed, carefully scooping the cub into her arms. Mr. Whittaker hurried over, his brow furrowed with concern. "A fox cub. It must have been separated from its family in the storm." "We can't leave it here," Penny said firmly. "'Twill freeze to death." Mr. Whittaker nodded. "Wrap it in my scarf and keep it warm. We'll take it with us." Penny bundled the cub in the soft wool scarf, holding it close as they continued their journey. Despite the added weight, her resolve never wavered. The mountain pass hours passed, and the group reached the narrow mountain pass that connected Snowbrook to the neighboring town. The wind was even fiercer here, howling through the cliffs and threatening to push them back with every step. "This is the most dangerous part," Mr. Whittaker warned. "The path is steep, and the snow could cause a rock slide if we're not careful." Penny nodded, her gears whirring with renewed determination. "We'll be careful, but we can't stop now." Blitzen led the way, his powerful hooves steady on the icy ground. Penny followed, clutching the fox cub tightly while keeping an eye out for falling rocks. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the pass. A chunk of ice had broken loose from the cliff above, tumbling down toward them. "Look out!" Mr. Whittaker shouted, pulling Penny and the cub out of the way just in time. Blitzen snorted, his bells jingling wildly as he reared back to avoid the falling debris. The sled tipped precariously, spilling some of their supplies into the snow. "We're okay," Penny said, brushing snow off her wooden arms. "But we need to move quickly before the storm makes things worse." Teamwork in the storm, they worked together to reload the sled, with Penny proving invaluable as she darted back and forth, retrieving lost supplies and clearing the path ahead. Her clockwork movements were precise and efficient, and her cheerful determination kept their spirits high despite the treacherous conditions. Even Blitzen seemed inspired by her courage. The old reindeer pulled the sled with renewed vigor, his breath puffing in clouds of steam as he pushed through the snow. At one point, Penny used her small but strong hands to untangle Blitzen's reins when they caught on a jagged rock. "There you go, big guy," she said with a smile, patting his nose. Blitzen nuzzled her in gratitude, his warm breath a welcome relief from the icy air. A glimmer of hope just as dawn began to break. The storm started to subside. The wind calmed, and the first rays of sunlight peeked through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the snow-covered landscape. "We're almost there," Mr. Whittaker said, pointing to the faint outline of the neighboring town in the distance. "Just a little farther, Penny." Penny's gears clicked faster, her excitement growing. "We can do it, Mr. Whittaker. Christmas isn't ruined." The sight of the town gave them a second wind. They pushed forward, their spirits lifted by the promise of success. Reaching the town, when they finally arrived at the town gates, the villagers there were astounded to see them. Covered in snow and weary from their journey, Mr. Whittaker, Penny, and Blitzen explained their mission. "You came all this way in the storm?" one villager asked in disbelief. "For Christmas," Penny said simply, her gemstone eyes shining with pride. The villagers quickly loaded the sled with food, decorations, and other supplies for the Snowbrook feast. They even offered the travelers warm blankets and hot cocoa before sending them on their way. "Thank you, Penny," Mr. Whittaker said as they prepared for the journey back. "I couldn't have done this without you." Penny smiled, her wooden face glowing with happiness. "I'm just glad I could help." As they set off toward Snowbrook, the fox cub snuggled closer to Penny, its tiny tail wagging in gratitude. A Christmas miracle, the journey back to Snowbrook felt different. The storm had completely cleared, leaving behind a sparkling winter wonderland. The sun now bathed the world in soft light, casting long shadows on the snow-covered ground. The air was crisp and refreshing, and the cold that had once been harsh now felt like a friend, gently reminding them of the hard work they had done and the joy that awaited. Penny sat at the front of the sled, holding the fox cub close, wrapped snugly in Mr. Whittaker's scarf. The cub, now much warmer, had stopped shivering and occasionally looked up at her with its wide, curious eyes. Blitzen, though exhausted, trotted steadily ahead, his hooves crunching through the fresh snow. Mr. Whittaker, his eyes twinkling with pride, was right behind, guiding the sled with a steady hand. "Are you tired, Penny?" Mr. Whittaker asked after a while, noticing how quiet she had become. Penny shook her head. "No, I'm fine. I'm just thinking about the village. About Christmas! We're going to make it happen." Her excitement was contagious, and even Blitzen seemed to pick up the pace, his bells jingling as he hurried forward. The road ahead was long, but it no longer seemed like an impossible task. They had made it this far, and Christmas was just around the corner. A little help from friends, as they continued their trek, the town of Snowbrook slowly appeared on the horizon. Penny could see the smoke rising from chimneys, the faint outlines of houses nestled beneath the snow, and the glowing lights of the village square, now visible against the pale blue sky. "Almost there," Penny shouted joyfully. "Just a little farther." Mr. Whittaker smiled at her enthusiasm. "I think we can manage, and I think the village will be glad to see us." As they neared Snowbrook, the villagers began to gather at the edge of the path, cheering and waving as they saw Mr. Whittaker, Penny, and Blitzen approaching. Their journey had not been in vain. Christmas was safe, and everyone had worked together to ensure it. The townspeople quickly surrounded the sled, eager to help unload the supplies. They helped bring the sacks of food and decorations into the village center, where a grand feast was planned for that night. Some of the children helped Penny care for the fox cub, while others gathered around Blitzen, petting the reindeer's soft fur and feeding him carrots. "Mr. Whittaker! Penny! You made it!" A familiar voice called out. It was Mrs. Bellingham, the village's kind-hearted baker. She came running toward them, her arms open for a hug. "We couldn't have done it without you," Mr. Whittaker said, his voice full of gratitude. "Thank you for all the help you gave us before the storm." Mrs. Bellingham beamed. "You did the hard part. You brought the Christmas spirit back to Snowbrook." Penny smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Christmas was about more than just the decorations, the food, and the presents. It was about community, about helping one another when things seemed difficult. This year, the villagers of Snowbrook had proved just how much they cared for each other, and how far they were willing to go to make Christmas magical. A Christmas feast as the evening approached. The village square was transformed into a winter wonderland. Twinkling lights hung from the trees, casting a soft glow on the snow-covered ground. Tables were lined with platters of food, roasts, pies, steaming mugs of hot cocoa, and trays of sweet gingerbread cookies. The sound of laughter filled the air as families and friends gathered together to celebrate. Penny and Mr. Whittaker took their seats at the long table, surrounded by the other villagers. Blitzen stood nearby, contentedly munching on some carrots and apples. The fox cub, now well and truly warm, played happily with the children, its fur gleaming in the soft light. As they all sat down to enjoy the feast, Penny couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder. This was the magic of Christmas. The kindness, the togetherness, the love that people shared with each other. She had always known that Christmas was special, but this year, she understood it in a way she never had before. "To Christmas," Mr. Whittaker said, raising a mug of cocoa in a toast. "To Christmas," the villagers echoed, their voices full of cheer. The celebration went on late into the night, with singing, dancing, and storytelling. Penny joined the children around the fire, singing carols and listening to old tales of Christmases past. She felt a deep sense of belonging as she looked around at the smiling faces, the twinkling lights, and the laughter that filled the air. A special gift later that evening, after the feast had ended, Mr. Whittaker took Penny aside, his eyes twinkling with something hidden, a secret he was eager to share. "Penny, I have something for you," he said with a smile. "Something special." Penny's eyes widened. "For me? What is it?" Mr. Whittaker reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box. It was polished and smooth, with tiny gold gears and stars etched along the sides. "I've been working on this for a while," he said, handing the box to her. "A gift to remind you of your courage, your kindness, and the Christmas spirit you helped bring back to Snowbrook." Penny took the box, her hands trembling with excitement. She carefully opened it to reveal a small clockwork snowflake, its delicate wings shimmering in the soft light of the village lanterns. With a gentle twist of her hand, the snowflake began to spin, sending sparkling flakes of snow swirling into the air. "It's beautiful," Penny whispered, her voice filled with awe. "Thank you, Mr. Woodacre. It's the most wonderful gift." Mr. Woodacre smiled warmly. "You deserve it, Penny. You helped make this Christmas one to remember." Penny looked around at the village, at the joy and love that surrounded her. She realized that, while the toys and the feasts and the decorations were wonderful, the true magic of Christmas was found in the hearts of the people, and in the small acts of kindness that made everything feel so special. As she watched the snowflake spin in her hands, Penny knew that this Christmas would be one she would never forget. And as she closed her eyes, the soft glow of the lanterns and the sound of the villagers' laughter filled her heart, bringing a sense of peace that would last long after the holiday season had passed. It was the first snow of the season in the village of Pine Hill, and Timmy could hardly contain his excitement. Christmas was only a few days away, and the village square was already alive with lights, decorations, and the sweet scent of gingerbread cookies wafting through the crisp winter air. Every year, Pine Hill's Christmas celebration was the highlight of the season. The village square was transformed into a winter wonderland, complete with twinkling lights, frosty pine trees, and a giant Christmas tree that towered over everyone. But it wasn't just any tree. This tree had a secret. A magical secret that made it the centerpiece of the village's holiday traditions. At the top of the tree, there was a star. It wasn't just any star, either. It was a beautifully crafted golden star, with shimmering gemstones that caught the light in the most mesmerizing way. The star was said to have magical powers, though no one really knew how. All the villagers knew was that whenever the star was placed on top of the tree, the village would experience the most wonderful Christmas imaginable. Snowfall that felt like a dream, laughter that echoed through the streets, and a sense of warmth and joy that filled every heart. This year, like every other year, Timmy couldn't wait to see the star placed at the top of the tree. He had been helping his family decorate their home, but the real magic, as far as Timmy was concerned, was in that star. His family had lived in Piney Hill for as long as he could remember, and every Christmas, the tradition of the star made everything feel extra special. But this year was different. On the morning of the Christmas festival, just hours before the ceremony to light the tree, Timmy's parents received a troubling message. "The star. It's gone," his father said, his voice filled with disbelief. Timmy's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, gone? The star can't just vanish." "I'm afraid it has, Timmy," his father replied. "It was stolen." The village square, usually buzzing with activity, was now filled with whispers and murmurs. The mayor, a tall man with a jolly demeanor named Mr. Frost, stood in front of the giant Christmas tree, wringing his hands with worry. "This is terrible," he said, shaking his head. "The Christmas star has always been the symbol of our village's holiday spirit. Without it, what will Christmas be?" The villagers gathered around, offering ideas and suggestions, but no one could figure out where the star had gone. Timmy couldn't bear to see the sadness in everyone's eyes. He couldn't let Christmas be ruined, not after all the hard work that had gone into preparing for the festival. "I'll find it," Timmy declared, his voice loud and clear. The crowd turned to look at him. surprised by the sudden outburst. Timmy's parents exchanged a worried glance, but they could see the determination in their son's eyes.
"Are you sure, Timmy?"
His mother asked softly. "It's a big task for someone so young." "I'm sure," Timmy said, nodding firmly. "The Christmas star is important to the village. I have to find it, and I will." Timmy gathered his friends, a group of kind-hearted children who shared his love for adventure and Christmas. There was Lily, his best friend, who always had a kind word to offer and a quick wit that could solve any puzzle. Then there was Max, the adventurous one, who wasn't afraid to take risks when it came to helping his friends. And finally, Sophie, who loved animals and had an incredible sense of direction, always knowing where to go, even when it seemed like there was no path to follow. Together, they set out on a quest to find the missing star. The search took them through Pin Hill's snowy streets, past the bustling marketplace, and through the forest that surrounded the village. Everywhere they went, they asked questions, hoping someone had seen anything suspicious. The villagers were just as puzzled as Timmy and his friends, but no one had any answers. The star had simply vanished overnight. As the group walked through the woods, the trees towering above them like silent guardians, Timmy began to wonder if the story about the star's magic was true. Could it really be that the star was special? That it had the power to bring joy and happiness to the village? If it was truly magical, could it be that someone had taken it for their own gain? And if that was the case, what could Timmy and his friends do to stop them? But Timmy didn't want to think about that. All he knew was that the star was important, and it was up to him and his friends to bring it back. The wind howled through the trees, but Timmy didn't feel cold. His heart was warm with determination, and his friends' energy kept him going. Together, they made their way deeper into the forest, following the faint footprints in the snow that seemed to lead them on the right path. Timmy and his friends ventured deeper into the snow-covered woods, their footsteps crunching through the crisp, fresh powder. The wind swirled around them, but they barely noticed the cold. Their excitement, and a little bit of worry, kept them going. "There must be a reason why the star was taken," Timmy said, his voice firm with determination. "And we're going to find out what it is." The others nodded, their faces set with the same resolve. They were on a mission, and nothing was going to stop them. Not the cold, not the mystery, and certainly not the unknown dangers of the forest. The village's Christmas spirit was at stake, and that was all that mattered. Max, who had been leading the group, suddenly stopped. He knelt down, inspecting something in the snow. "Look," he said, pointing to a trail of footprints in the snow that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. "These look fresh. I bet they belong to whoever took the star." Timmy leaned forward, squinting at the tracks. They were indeed strange. The footprints were small, almost child-sized, but the shape of the shoes was unfamiliar. They didn't look like anything anyone in the village would wear. "Do you think it's someone from the village?" Timmy asked. "I don't know," Lily replied, her voice thoughtful. "The footprints don't look like they belong to any of the villagers. But they do look like they're leading somewhere. Let's follow them." And so, with Max in the lead, the group followed the mysterious trail through the woods. The trees around them grew denser, their branches weighed down with snow. It felt as though they were entering a secret world, one that only the most determined adventurers could discover. As they walked, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. The silence in the forest was thick, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the occasional rustling of the wind. Timmy couldn't help but feel a little nervous. It wasn't like them to be out here in the woods this late, and certainly not on such an important mission. but the thought of Christmas being ruined by the loss of the star gave him the strength to push forward. The footprints led them to a clearing, where the sun filtered through the branches above, casting long shadows across the ground. In the center of the clearing was a small, quaint cabin that Timmy had never seen before. The cabin was tucked away behind a thick layer of trees, and it looked like it hadn't been used in years. "This is strange," Sophie said, her voice low. "I've never seen this cabin before. It's hidden so well. Why would someone build a cabin way out here in the woods?" "I don't know," Timmy said, frowning. "But I have a feeling the answers we're looking for are inside." Max, ever the brave one, took a step forward. "Let's go inside and see if we can find anything," he said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Wait," Lily interrupted. "We don't know who lives here, or if anyone lives here at all. We should be careful." But Timmy didn't want to wait. He felt the weight of the mystery pressing down on him, and he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. "We'll be careful," he promised. "But we need to find the star, and this is the only lead we have." The group approached the cabin cautiously, stepping lightly over the snow-covered ground. As they reached the front door, they realized it wasn't locked. Timmy pushed it open slowly, and they stepped inside. The cabin was small, cozy even, but it was clearly abandoned. Dust covered the wooden furniture, and cobwebs clung to the corners of the room. But what caught Timmy's eye was a small wooden table in the center of the room, where something shiny glimmered in the dim light. It was the unmistakable glow of the Christmas star. "There it is," Timmy exclaimed, his heart leaping with joy. But before they could reach it, a voice echoed from the shadows. "Not so fast." The group froze, their eyes darting around the room, but there was no one in sight. The voice had come from nowhere, and yet it seemed to fill the entire cabin. Timmy's heart raced, but he stood his ground. "Who's there?" Timmy called, his voice steady but full of curiosity. "Why did you take the star?" From the shadows, a figure stepped into view. A woman tall and thin, wearing a long dark cloak that seemed to blend in with the dim light. Her face was hidden by the hood of her cloak, but her eyes gleamed with a strange, unsettling brightness. "I took the star," the woman said, her voice low and eerie. "And I have my reasons." "Who are you?" Max demanded, stepping forward, his hands clenched into fists. "What do you want with it?" The woman smiled, her lips curling into a secretive grin. "I want to show the village what true Christmas magic is. You see, the star isn't just a decoration. It's a symbol. But over the years, the village has forgotten the real meaning of Christmas." Timmy took a cautious step forward, his curiosity growing. "What do you mean?" The woman chuckled softly. "I mean that Christmas isn't just about the star or the tree. It's about kindness, love, and the joy of giving. The village has become too focused on the decorations and the festivities, but they've forgotten what really matters." Timmy's heart sank. Was she right?